Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching third and final part of What If Kid Naruto hide his Sharingan from everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
No, said Hinata, getting to her feet. Chizu straightened her own wilted body and stood up, her eyes flashing angrily. Chizu hissed, "You dare defy us, girl?" Staring at Chizu with daggers, Hinata refused to back down. The Hinata who fell in love with Uchiha Naruto would not have given up, even though the old Hinata might have. Hinata's voice was as cold as steel as she answered, "You cannot threaten me. You cannot threaten Neji. And you cannot threaten Hanabi." As she stood her ground, her hands instinctively clenched into fists at her sides. The elders of the Hyuga were becoming more irate around her. Hinata adamantly declared, "I will not end my relationship with Uchiha Naruto." Chizu moved forward to give Hinata a forceful slap across the face. She refused to back down. Hinata looked at her without flinching as she held up her hand. Then Hinata closed her eyes and Chizu swung. And three things occurred at that precise moment. First, the doors flew open, letting a number of irate members of a particular pale-eyed clan enter. 2. Hinata's hand did not strike flesh, but Chizu's did. And 3. Senju Tsunade and an irate Sandaime Hokage showed up. When Hinata opened her eyes, she saw Naruto with a red mark on his face, glaring at Chizu. Naruto said icily, "You dare hurt my Hinata-chan?" as the room's temperature dropped a few degrees. Beside Naruto, Heishi uttered, "You dare attempt to harm and threaten my daughters?" The Sandaime Hokage questioned, "You dare threaten shinobi under my authority?" "You dare threaten shinobi who are going to be under my authority," replied Tsunade. "You dare threaten my son?" Neji's mother, Hinata, said. The elders and Chizu both became noticeably whiter. Chizu yelled, "This is clan business," at Tsunade and the Hokage. The Sandaime Hokage narrowed his eyes and uttered, "When you threaten my shinobi, it becomes the Hokage's business." Despite his reputation as a man of peace, the Sandaime Hokage was also notoriously brutal in quelling uprisings and eliminating traitors. The kind elderly man cherished his people and would stop at nothing to keep them safe. With flaming eyes, Heishi screamed, "You dare question my authority by going behind my back to threaten my daughter?" Tomodori gently extended his hands in an attempt to soothe the Hyuga's head. Tomodori calmly remarked, "Calm down, Heishi. Sama. We are just looking out for what is best for the clan." Hinata yelled angrily, "The best thing is for me to erase your presence from this earth." "You are nothing." Branch member, Ruoni spat. Everyone's eyes shifted to Naruto as he slowly raised a hand. "We agree to your terms. Hinata will break up with me, and you are unable to carry out your threats to Hanabi and Neji," Naruto said slowly. "Naruto-kun." Hinata cried. He turned to wink at her. Hinata scowled at first, but she saw him mouth the words, "Trust me." Hinata nodded. She turned to the elders and declared, "Uchiha Naruto, you are not my boyfriend as of this moment." "Happy?" Chizu scowled before reluctantly nodding. She whispered, "It is." "Acceptable then," and the elders gradually started to turn away. Naruto yelled, "Hyuga Hinata, then as of right now, you are my fiancé." The elders immediately turned around, their eyes blazing. Chizu hissed, "What the hell did you say, brat?" With a smile, Naruto held up a contract. The betrothal of Uchiha Naruto to Hyuga Hinata was stated quite clearly. Hinata looked from the contract to Naruto as her eyes grew wide. With a broad, joyful smile and a massive red flush on her face, she muttered, "Naruto-kun. Marriage," and passed out. Before anyone could notice, she struck the ground. Naruto's perspiration fell. Maybe Heishi wasn't the best person to tell them about his marriage and a potential shady meeting between Hyuga elders. The elders of the Hyuga clan suffered severe punishment and lost their abilities. They were all dropped into the branch family after being sealed with the caged bird seal. After that, everything in the Hyuga camp was going smoothly. Still content in La La Land. Hinata was taken away to recuperate from her ordeal. After thanking Heishi for watching over Hinata, Naruto departed with Tsunade and the Hokage. Jiraiya had approached Naruto that day with the Hokage and Tsunade in tow, and word would not get out about Uchiha Naruto and Hyuga Hinata's engagement. "Naruto, I have permission to take you away from Konoha for 2.5 years, Jiraiya replied. Wide-eyed, Naruto gazed at him. Naruto questioned, "You are going to train me?" Jiraiya gave a nod. Jiraiya smiled and said, "I'm going to train you to become an awesome shinobi like me." As Naruto slapped his hand across his forehead, his smile vanished. Naruto moaned, "I'm doomed." The Sandaime Hokage smiled as Tsunade laughed. "Wait just a second, brat. I'm one of the most shinobi alive. You should be honored to be trained by me," Jiraiya replied. "And the most perverted," Tsunade muttered, rolling her eyes out. Naruto smiled as he looked up. Naruto replied, "Thank you, I know." After giving Naruto a startled look, Jiraiya grinned and tousled his hair. "We're leaving early tomorrow, so get all your stuff ready," Jiraiya replied. "Tomorrow? Yes. We'll attend Tsunade's coronation before leaving," Jiraiya replied. Naruto gave a nod. The words, "I understand," came out. "Good. When you'll come back, I would have turned you into the most kick-ass ninja and you'll pass the Anbu test with flying colors," laughed Jiraiya. Naruto gave Jiraiya a smile. With his fist pumped in the air, he declared, "And I'll protect everyone who is precious to me." The Hokage ruffled his hair affectionately and remarked, "That's the spirit, Naruto-kun. I'm sure your parents are very proud of you." Naruto returned the smile. Naruto was shown a ring by Tsunade. At least an hour had passed since they started, and Naruto was starting to lose patience. She remarked, "That one," Naruto scowled as he observed her. "It seems a bit flashy. I don't have that much money either," murmured Naruto. "Kid, it's your fiancé you're talking about. It's supposed to be flashy," replied Tsunade. Naruto imagined the ring on Hinata's delicate fingers as he considered her smooth and soft hands. He nodded enthusiastically to the jeweler as his thought bubble burst. A very irate Hokage was yelling at the manager in the back room, so the amused jewelry assistant took out the tray and put the ring on the table. Naruto looked it over. He grinned and said, "It's perfect." As Tsunade was proclaimed the Sandaime Hokage, Naruto and Hinata stood hand in hand beside each other. Jiraiya gestured that he had an hour as the audience applauded the hero's return. Naruto nodded and swept Hinata off to a peaceful location where they could be by themselves. Hinata had dozed off on Naruto's shoulder as they sat by a tree. Naruto grinned as he remembered the lovely girl who slept peacefully next to him. The fact that she was his fiancée made Naruto happy on the inside. Perhaps he had known he loved her from the moment he laid eyes on her. He was attracted to her because of her bravery, beauty, sweet disposition, and even her tender affection for small things like flowers. He knew she loved him, even though she didn't share his passion for cinnamon rolls and ramen. After stirring and blinking slowly, Hinata gave Naruto a languid smile. She yawned, then cuddled back onto his shoulder while making adorable noises. A hand passed through her hair as she felt Naruto laugh. They relished the final moments they would spend together for a while. Naruto reluctantly roused her once more. Naruto had purposefully stood up with her back to the tree and no way out as they stood up. "Hinata-chan. I found out that I'm leaving on a training trip," started Naruto. Hinata's gaze expanded. "What, when are you leaving? For how long?" she responded. Naruto answered, 2 years or so. I'm leaving in about 15 minutes. Hinata had lost her smile and appeared completely dejected. In order to lift his eyes, Naruto cupped her chin and pushed it upward. "You are my fiancé now, Hinata. Will you wait for me to return?" replied Naruto. Hinata gave him a tight hug and glomped him. "I would wait indefinitely," she muttered. She gave him a perplexed look as Naruto pulled away from her embrace. As she watched him bow down, her eyes grew wide. "Hinata-chan. Even though we are officially engaged, I would like to do it properly. Will you marry me and make me the happiest fiancé on the planet?" replied Naruto. With a modest nod, Hinata observed Naruto grinning and placing a gold ring on her finger. It featured a rose adorned with lavender gems and was beautifully designed. Looking at it, now sitting on her left ring finger, Hinata gasped. "It's lovely," she whispered. Naruto gave her a joyful smile before his eyes became serious. He cupped his cheek and whispered, "Not as beautiful as you thought." When Hinata saw him get closer, her eyes grew wide. Eyes closed, their heads slowly drifted together. They were about to finally meet when Jiraiya's shout of "Gaki" next to them startled them backward. Naruto, wearing a huge blush, turned to face Jiraiya. He screamed, "What the hell?" at Jiraiya. Jiraiya smiled, then became serious. He declared, "It's time to go." Naruto gave a sorrowful nod, and he and Hinata joined hands to start walking toward the gates with Jiraiya. "Damn it," was all they could think about. With his pack fastened to his back, Naruto stood alongside Jiraiya. With the exception of Sasuke, the group known as the Konoha 12 inches stood together. Hyuga Heishi, Kakashi, Shizune, Taunton, Iruka, Tsunade, and the former Hokage Hiruzen were also present. Naruto grinned at the group of people, all of whom had come together via a trial or friendship. Naruto started to go around slowly. Not wearing his Hokage robe, he first embraced Hiruzen. Naruto said, "Thank you for everything." Hiruzen ruffled his hair and grinned. "Your parents are very proud of you, I'm sure," said the man. Next was Tsunade, who also gave a hug. Tsunade remarked lovingly, "I'll miss you, brat. Take care of yourself, you hear me?" Naruto returned the whisper, "Ba-chan." Shizune gave him a warm embrace and advised him to be careful. Kakashi said he didn't give hugs while ruffling his hair. He shook hands with Kiba, who nodded back, despite their disagreement. Even though they had fought for the same girl, they were aware that when Konoha was overrun, their differences were set aside and they could forgive one another. He eventually reached the final individual as he went around. Hyuga Hinata, his fiancée, stood hesitantly before him, grinning sadly. She sadly whispered, "Goodbye Naruto-kun," before being embraced. They stood there for a few minutes, just enjoying each other's company for the last time in a long time without saying anything. Hinata, tears streaming down her cheeks, watched them slowly fall apart. Naruto tenderly cupped her right cheek and whispered, "Be strong for me, Hinata-chan." After giving a nod, Hinata took a step back. Jiraiya, who was standing beside Tsunade, exclaimed, "Come on, Gaki. It's time we left." With a smile on her face, Tsunade gave him a gentle peck on the cheek as he pointed cheekily at his lips. She pressed her lips to his cheek for a brief moment after he gestured to it. With a loving smile, she whispered, "You old pervert, take care of yourself." Jiraiya smiled and said, "Take care of yourself, flat-chested Hokage." Following that, the group waved to Jiraiya and Naruto as they slowly left Konoha. They were a few meters away from the main group, but they were waving joyfully when Naruto caught sight of Hinata's face, grinning for him. After letting out a sigh at his planned action, Naruto hurried back. As Naruto sped past them, the group blinked in shock. As Naruto materialized in front of Hinata, he put his left arm around her back and drew her into a passionate, long-lasting kiss, causing her eyes to widen. His eyes gleamed as he withdrew after a few seconds. He believed he heard a mumbled, "troublesome," and a few sighs from the women in attendance. He whispered, "Hyuga Hinata, I love you." As he helped her steady, Hinata became very red and could hardly stay conscious. After giving her a quick squeeze and grinning, Naruto turned to leave. As a sheepish Naruto walked away, scratching the back of his head, several whistles erupted from onlookers. Heishi had given him a small smile, and Hiruzen had given him a light handcuff on the back of the head. When Naruto arrived, Jiraiya grinned and gave him an elbow. Naruto smiled and pushed him back. They waved goodbye and walked slowly down the street. "Naruto!" was yelled. Naruto turned to see Hinata, who had hurried a few meters ahead of the group. Her hands were balled into fists, and her head was lowered slightly. Her face was red and her eyes were screwed shut. She opened her eyes to gaze at Naruto and exclaimed, "I love you too," with all her heart. She gave him a brilliant smile as her hands relaxed and her posture changed to an upward position as Naruto grinned at her with joy. Hinata's hand clenched into a fist as they vanished over the horizon. "Wait and you'll see Naruto-kun. I'll get even more powerful," she pondered. Ninjas stood silently in another area. Zetsu declared, "Naruto and Jiraiya have left Konoha." Pain grinned. He muttered, "So it begins." They moved quickly, avoiding shuriken and kunai. Both ninjas rolled out of the way of a wave of small stones after ducking beneath a swinging log. The purple-clad figure jumped as another log came closer, slamming her palms against the swinging log and pumping chakra into her hands to propel herself forward while standing up. The pink-clad figure slid on her back beneath the log, then stood up and ran on. An observer frowned at her two apprentices as she watched their every move. A second or two ahead of the pink-haired ninja, the purple-clad ninja crossed the finish line. Sweat was streaming down their faces and they were both panting heavily. They both grabbed water bottles and towels as they walked to a nearby table. Tsunade came down to observe Hyuga Hinata and Haruno Sakura. "Very good both of you. Hinata, you're continuing to get faster and better, you made the better decisions and thus you won. Sakura, great work also. Your slide underneath the log was brilliant, but there might have been danger if there was ninja wire hidden. However, both of you showed great skill in avoiding attacks that if inflicted on you could prove fatal to you or your teammates. Well done both of you, you're dismissed." Tsunade said before heading to the tower. Hinata stretched her aching muscles and leaned gratefully against the tree. Sakura was leaning against the tree, exhausted. Sakura turned to face Hinata, who once more had a distant expression on her face. Sakura sighed and casually shook her head at Hinata, saying, "You're thinking about him again." Hinata sprang to her feet and turned to Sakura, her face sporting a slight flush. How do you know?" Hinata squeaked. Sakura grinned. Sakura imitated Hinata's face and mockingly said, "Because when you think of him, your eyes get this dreamy faraway look." Hinata giggled and pushed her with her shoulder. With a hand on her shoulder, Sakura said, "He'll be back soon." Hinata gave Sakura a smile. Hinata answered, "I understand. I just need to wait a bit longer." As they arrived in Konoha, Naruto sneezed. Jiraiya shook his head and looked at him. At about 8 in the morning, it was still early. The streets were largely clear because Konoha had only just begun to awaken from its sleep. Overhead, birds chirped in the trees. The guards showed them their papers and nodded them through, and it was comparatively quiet. They marched into Konoha together. "I told you that we should have stayed for longer at that motel," Jiraiya replied. Naruto turned to Jiraiya after taking a sniff. "If we stayed any longer, you would have found the red light district. I prefer that we left then and there," said Naruto. Jiraiya gave a snort. Jiraiya sneered, "You just don't have any taste in women." Naruto gave him a disbelieving glance. Naruto muttered, "Hinata-chan is nothing like those women you go out with." Jiraiya smiled. With a knowing smile, he said, "And you haven't seen her for a long time, perhaps you're nervous?" Naruto grinned at Jiraiya after glancing at the ground. He smiled and remarked, "Perhaps a tiny bit." Jiraiya stated, "I have to go see Tsunade first, though." Naruto gazed over Konoha as they leapt to the roof. Naruto looked around and remarked, "It's good to be back." He smiled when he saw Tsunade's face on the Hokage mountain. Naruto chuckled and said, "Oba-chan's old mug is now on display for everyone to see." With a smile on her face, Jiraiya and she jumped over the roofs to reach the Hokage monument. They rapped on the heavy office doors of the Hokage. "Go away," was the muttered response. Observing the expression in Jiraiya's eye, Naruto shook his head. He whispered, "You have a death wish." With a shout of victory, Jiraiya kicked open the doors with a foot. Jiraiya started to say, "Tsunade, I'm Ba," but was cut off when a heavy medical book struck his skull, sending him into the wall across from him, leaving a beautiful indent. Jiraiya exclaimed, "That wasn't nice," as he pulled his body away from the indent. However, a second heavy medical book struck his face, creating a beautiful figure in the wall with a square book for a head. After blinking, Naruto moved forward. Tsunade was slouched with her left side down over the desk. She looked surprised as she picked up her head, a piece of paper stuck to her mouth. With a look of surprise on her face, Tsunade stood up as a hand snatched the offending paper and threw it onto the desk. "I didn't expect you back so soon," Tsunade said. "I thought you would be back in another week or so." Jiraiya, who appeared fully recovered, stood beside Naruto. Jiraiya puffed, his chest expanding with air. "I just wanted to see your lovely face again, my lady Tsunade." Tsunade mumbled, "Piss off," smiling as Jiraiya's chest flattened. Tsunade glanced up and down at Naruto, who had nearly reached Jiraiya's height. Tsunade laughed and opened her arms to embrace the little squirt, saying, "Seemed the little squirt had a growth spurt." Tsunade acted as a mother figure in Naruto's life, and despite their brief time together, Naruto reminded her a lot of a son she never had. Jiraiya positioned himself to be hugged again as she moved forward to embrace Naruto. Jiraiya flew into the wall with a big chakra powered slap to the cheek, deepening the indent in the wall. "Stupid pervert," Tsunade muttered darkly before turning to face Naruto and giving him a close-up look. Tsunade smiled and said, "It looks like you're in top physical condition. I'm sure the ladies will be pleased about that." Naruto returned the smile. Naruto shuddered at the regime and remarked, "I've already engaged Ba-chan. Plus, Arrow Senin put me on a hellish regime which left me exhausted for about the first 2 months that I did it." "It was for his own good," Jiraiya stated gravely. Recognizing the situation, Tsunade gestured for her Anbu guards to depart before erecting a soundproof wall around the space. "Akatsuki are mobilizing their forces. Several of the Biju have been captured already," stated Jiraiya. Tsunade worriedly inquired, "What news from our contact? Is he still loyal?" Naruto nodded and walked out of the room when Jiraiya gestured to him. There were still some items that required classification. When the door had closed, Jiraiya said, "Yes, Itachi is still loyal." Tsunade questioned, was he able to help Naruto train? Yes, he and Kisame split for about a month to look for different clues on the location of the Biju. Itachi was able to visit for a lengthy period then, and also a few sporadic visits over the years, said Jiraiya. Tsunade nodded after scowling. Tsunade put her hands on her hips and remarked, "So he stays loyal, even now." Jiraiya let out a sigh and sagged a little, with some concern. Tsunade said, "You should go rest, you're tired, aren't you?" Jiraiya gave her a smile. Jiraiya whispered, "I'll be fine, Tsunade-chan," before letting Naruto in and opening the door. Tsunade turned to both of them. "Welcome back to Konoha officially then. Naruto, the Anbu wished to see you as soon as possible for the testing," Tsunade replied. Naruto gave a nod and walked away. "Oh, and Naruto," Tsunade exclaimed. As Naruto turned, he saw a chain of keys. Tsunade said lovingly, "It's good to have you back. The keys to your new house, the house that you now inherit." Naruto grinned and said, "Thanks Ba-chan, it's good to be home," before heading out. Tsunade turned to face Jiraiya, who scowled at her malevolent gaze. "Since you're fine Jiraiya-kun, you can write me a minimum of a 2-page report on your training with Naruto," replied Tsunade. Jiraiya gave a face. "Fail, indeed, welcome home." Naruto traveled to the Anbu headquarters, which is close to the Hokage Tower. He strode to the entrance and entered the building after the Anbu guard there nodded him in. As he pushed through the heavy oak door, he saw a typical civilian woman wearing glasses and having her dark red hair pulled back in a ponytail. She sat in a room that was entirely empty save for a pot plant and a big secretary desk. Another receptionist, who was on the phone, was seated next to her. She spoke in a clipped professional voice as she looked at her page. She returned to the papers on her desk after saying, "Uchiha Naruto, please proceed to room 304 on the 5th level, thank you." After giving a nod of gratitude, Naruto headed upstairs to room 304. He took a deep breath and rapped on the door. "Come in," was the response. When Naruto walked in, he saw a Morino Ibiki and an Anbu member wearing a mask. The room contained a couch, a television, a desk, and multiple chairs. And a couple of images. Ibiki stood up and took his place to the left of the Anbu member, who was seated in a chair behind the desk. People could look out of a reflective window, but they couldn't look in because the room was bright with sunlight. Ibiki gestured for him to take a seat in the offered chair. As Ibiki produced a clipboard, Naruto sat down. "Uchiha Naruto, I assume you are here for your Anbu test?" Ibiki responded. "Hi," was Naruto's emotionless response. "Excellent. Would you wish to proceed immediately, or schedule for another time?" Ibiki responded. Naruto answered, "Now would be appropriate, Ibiki-sama." The member of Anbu moved forward in his chair. Naruto gave it a close look and recognized it as a crocodile. "Do you know why Anbu members wear a mask, Naruto-san?" Crocodile inquired. Naruto gave a headshake. "There are various reasons, many of which could be applicable. Perhaps a code of honor, or a code of conduct when wearing the mask. I am unsure of the significance of the mask, but am more than willing to learn," said Naruto. Crocodile gave a nod of approval. The Anbu member stated, "Good answer, then we shall proceed with the test." Ibiki said, "Please follow us," and Naruto followed the two commanding figures as they left the office. Blood was streaming from a cut above Naruto's forehead as he slammed into the wall. Blood spit out of his mouth. A hooded figure with a face questioned, "What is pain? What is pleasure? What is agony? What is death?" Naruto grinned as he glanced at him. He taunted, "Answer to all the above, fresh bread?" 3 designated members of Cloud Anbu struck him with their fists. Naruto was then sliced across the skull, knocking him to the ground. He saw stars after being kicked in the jaw, and he lost his breath after being kicked in the stomach. "You are going to die either way. We can do this the short way, and ease your suffering, or the long way," said the hooded individual. With his arms bound behind his back with unique handcuffs that prevented chakras from working, Naruto snorted as he slowly raised himself up. The 3 Anbu members grabbed Naruto and placed him in a lone chair in the dark room after the figure nodded to them. The room had only one light swinging. "Are you willing to tell me every secret you have? I will ease your pain, little child," said the figure. Naruto did not answer. "We have authorization to kill you if you do not reveal what you know. We will not hold back, unless you tell us everything," stated the individual. Silently, Naruto glared at the figure. Before Naruto's shirt was torn open, the figure chuckled, "All you have to do is plead for mercy." Naruto felt the kunai drive about an inch into his chest. Naruto clenched his jaw in agony. "Tell us everything," the figure hissed. After shaking his head, Naruto was struck in the chest by 2 more kunai. Blood was streaming from Naruto's body as he screamed in agony. His face went to the side as a backhand slammed across it. His face was held by the hooded figure. The figure hissed, "If you beg for mercy, this will all be over," and then slammed his forehead against Naruto's. A kunai was scraped across both of his arms after a cut appeared on his forehead. A tiny pool of blood was now forming on the ground. The chest of Naruto heaved up and down. His thigh was cut when the figure reached down and pulled a scalpel. Naruto tightened his jaw. After lowering itself to extract a menacing looking hook, the figure moved it to the location of his liver. "Mercy?" he inquired. "Never," Naruto yelled. Naruto found himself in a world of agony after the figure drove the hook into his stomach. "Mercy?" the figure mocked. "No," Naruto suffocated. As the hook went deeper, he let out a painful scream. "Now." "No." They added another hook, and he felt it snagging his large intestine. "Now?" Naruto screamed, "I would rather die." As he arrived, Naruto gasped and shook his head, breathing heavily. He sat in the chair. "Well done. You have passed the exam to be entered into the Anbu Corps," Ibiki replied. Naruto gave a heave. "Amazing. I completely lost it that I was in a genjutsu. It was so real," Naruto gasped. After smiling, Ibiki gestured for Naruto to follow him. After following them down a number of stairs, Naruto arrived at a spacious hall featuring a stage. Crocodile and Ibiki turned to face him. "The purpose of the Anbu exam is exactly that. Are you able to withstand large amounts of pain and horrific torture? Anbu can be given vital information by the Hokage or high officials, and if captured should this information be extracted could cost the lives of hundreds of fellow shinobi. Many are asked to join the Anbu but there is a high fail rate," Ibiki began. With his hands behind his back, Crocodile approached him. He looked at Naruto as he strode up to him. "The Ansatsu Senjutsu Tokushu Butai are the right hand of the Hokage. They are there to serve and protect first and foremost the Hokage and the village. They are the ones who embark on the hardest missions, the ones who risk their lives to protect the village. They are the ones asked to do the near impossible, and trained to be the elite of the ninja forces. They are called upon to make large sacrifices to the Anbu, as well as having to live a double life and never compromising the organization," stated Crocodile. "There are only a select number of people who enter the Anbu by the cages themselves. Anbu are to be sent to different sub-groups within an organization, yet each and every member is important," Ibiki continued. "Anbu are handpicked personally by the Hokage. The Sandaime Hokage has recommended you, as has the Gondame Hokage herself. The mask of the Anbu is a symbolism of your oath to protect and serve the Hokage, and of Konoha herself. Traitors are to be cursed to the lowest hell, and loyalty is rewarded with comradeship and a joining of the coalition of brothers and sisters. And with the passing of this test, Uchiha Naruto, you are eligible to join this select group of ninjas, loyal to the Hokage and to Konoha foremost. Uchiha Naruto, do you agree to join the Anbu? If your answer is no, you will never be asked ever again," Crocodile continued. After straightening up, Naruto bowed. "I accept this honor," he declared. Crocodile said, "Then step forward and receive the mask," and he produced a mask from behind him. Naruto took the mask and moved forward. It was sturdy but lightweight. His nose and other facial features were positioned in a number of indentations. Nothing was visible to secure the mask to him, not even a string. Naruto said, "I accept with honor," then took a step back and turned to face the 2 men. Crocodile clarified, "If you put the mask on yourself, it will only stick to your face." When Naruto put the ceramic mask on his face, chakra poured into the mask from his tenketsu. Despite Naruto shaking his head, the mask remained in place. Even though he was wearing a mask now, he was still able to see clearly through it as though nothing were blocking his vision. Crocodile said, "May this mask be the symbol of your oath to Konoha. Step forward, Fox." When Crocodile uttered these words, Anbu members streaming in from all over Konoha surrounded him. Everyone applauded, and Naruto approached them, bowing deeply. The members of the Anbu then vanished as swiftly as they had appeared. Naruto looked at Crocodile and Ibiki. "Fox, only a select few will know about your identity. All Anbu members' identity, except for a select few, are to be kept secret. To reveal the identities of Anbu members could allow the coalition to be compromised. That is why only after the placing of your mask, are Anbu members allowed to congratulate you. It is vital that you keep your identity safe," stated Crocodile. Fox acknowledged with a nod. And what branch of the Anbu would you be suited for, Fox? Ibiki responded. At that moment, Tsunade and Jiraiya showed up. Tsunade ruffled Fox's hair affectionately and smiled at him. She remarked, I see Squirt has passed the exam. Hi, Hokage. Sama, Ibiki said. Jiraiya inquired, have you put him in a branch yet? Crocodile said, no Jiraiya. Sama, we are going to do that now. Jiraiya smiled and said, may I suggest, the assassination squad? Crocodile and Ibiki exchanged glances. All due respect Jiraiya. Sama, the assassination squad has the highest fatality rate, and is also the most prestigious. It is tough for all Anbu who walk that path. Fox is also very young, only 15, replied Crocodile. I trained him myself. His style is suited to the assassination squad, and I assure you Hokage. Sama agrees, stated Jiraiya. Tsunade gave a nod. I will also personally overlook the missions he will undertake. He is an exception, as we all know the dangers of Akatsuki. We cannot allow Fox to fall into the wrong hands, stated Tsunade. I understand Hokage. Sama. Fox, you will be relegated to the assassination branch of the Anbu. For now, rest up and start to prepare yourself. You are an Anbu now, and you must now act like one whenever you put on the mask. You are allowed to walk around in public day with the mask, but be respectful to the people, and do not abuse the powers you were given as an Anbu. Violators and abusers of power will be punished severely. I suggest you read the manual that will be delivered to your house at a later date, replied Crocodile. And for the person who I reveal my identity to, Fox responded. You must do it in secret, and only that person may know. Fox, you must swear that person to secrecy, and they must not reveal the identity of who you are, Ibiki said. Fox remarked, I understand Ibiki. Sama, is there anything else you require? I assume it has been a long 2.5 years, and are in need of some rest, replied Crocodile. Fox shook his head and then became alert. One thing, can I get one of those long robes Anbu wear? But in black? Replied Naruto. Your mask will allow you to access the stores for weapons and clothing. They are located below ground, Ibiki said. Naruto said, then, with permission, I ask for my leave. Permission granted. Go now Fox, and may the mask serve you well, replied Crocodile. After bowing to them, Naruto left. Crocodile glanced at Tsunade and Jiraiya. I have the latest report for you concerning Akatsuki and their activities in my office, before I need to head off. Kisame is growing slightly suspicious and it would be wise to hasten my departure as soon as possible, replied Crocodile. Tsunade said, come Ibiki, we will need your mind for this one as well, and the four of them headed for Crocodile's office. He gave the secretary a nod before heading down the one-story stairs to the two Anbu standing watch. The stairs ended there, and it was the only door open. Through the door, they gave him a nod. The base's outline was displayed on a large map on the side of a spacious hallway. Fox followed the length of the corridor to the clothes store with his finger. Anbu would greet him with a nod as he walked down the corridor, and he would do the same. He headed for the designated hallway and proceeded down it. Everything was blocked by a door that stood in the center. A scanner scanned Naruto's mask as he approached the door, and then the door opened to let him in. Cool, Naruto thought. When Fox entered the store, he saw a chubby male civilian reading a book while seated in a chair. He glanced at Fox and lowered the book. The civilian said, everything you will find here. Please pay here when you are done. With a nod of gratitude, Fox took out the black robe that was the size of his head and carried it to the counter. The civilian glanced at the robe's price and said, new? Haven't seen you before? Hi, said Fox. The man grinned and said, then take this as half price. With a nod of gratitude, Naruto handed him the necessary cash and departed the shop. This is the start of my new life as an Anbu, with enthusiasm, he thought. I suppose we should go see Hinata-chan now. Standing silently on the tree trunk some distance away, he observed her spinning elegantly around, creating different shapes. At the moment, she was training near a sizable lake, quite a distance from Konoha. When she spun herself into a Kaden, he saw her long hair swirl in the air. Then, she abruptly stopped and hopped in a ready position, her arms facing him. For the first time in 2.5 years, Fox had a chance to see her up close. At the age of 12, she was adorable and attractive, but by the time she was 15, she was developing into a stunning young lady who nearly astounded him. Her bangs were brushed aside, and her long hair cascaded down her back. She gazed confidently at him, her pupilless eyes framed by long eyelashes. You have been watching me for 15 minutes, what is your business, Anbu? She inquired. With a quiet chuckle, Fox leapt to the ground. He grinned to himself. She didn't have her Byakugan on. Before he unleashed his murderous intent, he strode slowly in her direction. Hinata's gaze expanded. Byakugan, she muttered, and her Byakugan immediately came to life. Without using any hand seals, Fox activated his Sharingan in response. She hurried in a straight line, very fast. Fox reached for his weapon holster in his pants pocket. He drew 3 shuriken and hurled them at her. She entered a slide and leaned her head back while they passed overhead innocuously. Then she threw her weight forward and slammed her hands to the floor. She used her chakra to move faster and farther forward, creating 2 tiny craters. Fox took a quick step back and threw 3 more shuriken at her. This time, the shuriken flew beneath her as she arched her back gracefully after spinning her body in the air to increase her speed. She landed with a hand between her knees and 2 feet on the ground. She leapt forward quickly after landing, her left hand rising in a chop toward Fox's head. Fox's right arm sprang up, using his forearm to block the blow at the wrist. She moved, reaching for his chest with her right hand. He slapped the hand up with his other arm. Then she shifted quickly, switching to a sweep of her legs. With his head turned to the ground, Fox slid away from her, backflipping backwards. Naruto thought proudly, "My dearest, you have come a long way." Then Hinata lunged forward, releasing 3 shuriken with her hand. As Fox ducked and approached, he saw Hinata's hand reach for his mask and yank it off. Using her momentum, he threw her in the same direction she was going after. His left hand shot up and grabbed her wrist. She flipped forward and flew through the air, flinging 3 kunai. After removing 2 kunai and knocking off the other 2, Fox grabbed the final one and threw it back. After landing, Hinata turned around and narrowly avoided the kunai, cutting her cheek as it passed and crashed into the tree. She immediately extended her hand, briefly turning green as she closed the wound. As usual, it was quick and very controlled, Naruto thought. Her hands blurred into hand seals as she stepped forward, leaping into the air. As she exclaimed, "Suiden Suiryuden no Jutsu," with a roar, a huge dragon rose from the lake's depths and headed in Fox's direction. Fox used his own hand seals in response. "Doden Doryuheki," was his response. Just as the dragon thundered towards Fox, mud poured out of the tiny opening at the bottom of the porcelain mask, allowing Anbu members to perform mouth-related jutsu. The mud formed a large wall in front of Fox. Water and earth flew as the dragon crashed into the wall. When Fox noticed that his wall's upper half was gone, he stood still. Having trained in the morning and again now, Hinata was a little exhausted. She felt a little guilty now because she had invested a lot of chakra in her dragon. "What is this Anbu trying to get me to do?" she thought. "I can't get past his defense, but he's coming at me with the intent to kill." Hinata calmed herself and cleared her head by taking slow, deep breaths. She was aware that he wasn't yet fully serious because he hadn't produced the katana strapped to his back. Her head held high and her eyes gleamed with confidence as she asked, "Are you afraid to use your katana?" She sensed that the Anbu's eyes were staring at her, but it remained silent. As a breeze passed by, her hair blowing in the wind, the porcelain face with the red markings of a fox just stared back. As a few leaves passed by, Hinata blinked reflexively. He was gone when her eyes opened. Her Byakugan immediately saw him approaching from the left, and she assumed the Juken stance, shifting sideways with her right arm close to her chest and her left arm out. She was pushed backwards by his barrage of punches and kicks. She ducked under a quick fist, then pushed herself back even more when her arms shot out to block a kick. The kick pushed her back, causing her sandals to slide against the floor. After straightening up, she pushed off her hands backwards from a leg sweep and backflipped into a handstand. To her astonishment, the Anbu kicked off with its hand, resembling Maeda Gai's dynamic entrance move with his foot extended. With a sidestep, Hinata raised her left leg to touch the Anbu's foot. Hinata was knocked to the ground when the Anbu's legs windmilled and slammed into her other foot. As the axe kicked and his foot struck the ground where she had been just a moment earlier, she swiftly rolled to the side. The Anbu gracefully flipped up with one hand before charging once more as she slid into a ready position. It was immediately difficult for Hinata to protect herself from the growing barrage of attacks. Her last line of defense had to be used. She shouted, "Protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms." He entered with a barrage of knees, elbows, and punches. She quickly counted the number in her mind as she parried each one. 64. As a fist crept through and headed for her face, she thought frantically. Her head struck nothing but air, so she cocked it to the left. He slid back as she kicked back, her feet striking his guard. With increased speed and intensity, the Anbu returned with a vengeance. Hinata had to use all of her strength to avoid the initial attacks. Protection of the 8 trigrams, 128 palms, she screamed. As they clashed, the Anbu's feet fully complemented her hands, and her final defense held firm. 128, she retreated in thought. She shouted, "Yuho Soshikan," as chakra began to form on her hands. She swung both of them in the direction of the Anbu member. The Anbu member used what appeared to be 2 orbs of chakra to counteract her own. A huge cloud of smoke erupted as the 2 moves collided, sending them both flying. Hinata took off in reverse. She thought, damn it, the smoke is too thick and chakra-based for my Byakugan to see through. She watched in horror as the Anbu member blasted her through the smoke. Her left hand reached out in a palm toward her chest as she slid to a stop, but it was blocked to the side. She was about to raise her left foot toward her groin when it was stepped on. He was now directly in front of her, already on her guard, after her right arm blocked his kick. The Anbu member's right arm held her back gently but firmly as their faces were only a few centimeters apart. She did not, however, perceive any threat from the Anbu member. Rather, her body relaxed and she felt satisfied. "What's going on?" Hinata asked. She froze when a tender hand caressed her cheek, removing dirt. Electric sparks erupted from their touch, freezing her thoughts. Deathly soft and shocked, she whispered, Naruto-kun. The Anbu member lifted their left hand and gradually removed the mask to reveal an older Naruto grinning broadly while his eyes were fixed on her. "My Hinata-chan," he muttered, then leaned forward and kissed her tenderly. He pulled away to gaze at her wide eyes and pale ghostly face. Immediately, she passed out. Sitting on a cozy sofa in a spacious living room, Hinata woke slowly and blinked. She yawned slowly, thinking that Naruto had returned in a fantastic dream she had just had. The blanket covering her dropped to the ground as she sat up. She surveyed the strange location. The wooden floorboards appeared shiny and had just been waxed, and it had just been cleaned. The curtains were hanging in a multicolored area of light red, yellow, and blue. There were long sweeping sounds and footsteps. Wondering how she got here, Hinata shook her head. Then it dawned on her. It had been reality, not a dream. "Naruto!" she exclaimed as she bounded to her feet. Glancing frantically, her bare feet ran down into the closest hallway. Naruto emerged from a room carrying a big broom, his expression first inquisitive and then beaming. A smile spread across Hinata's face. He pointed farther down the corridor and said, "Hinata-chan, Naruto is in the study, it's that way." With a nod of gratitude, Hinata eagerly went on, encountering multiple Narutos who were all cleaning. They had all smiled at her and gestured toward the real Naruto. As she hurried through the mansion, Hinata was astounded by the size of the house. When she finally arrived at the study at the rear of the house, she saw Naruto. Naruto grinned and got up after giving her a startled look as he reached for a scroll on the study desk. "Hinata-chan," he exclaimed, his face beaming with joy at seeing his angel. The next second she thundered into his chest, her arms glomping him around the waist, and he laughed softly. 2 powerful, firm arms encircled her in a tender embrace. Her voice was joyful as she whispered, "You're back, my Naruto-kun." As she approached his shoulder, Naruto planted a kiss on the top of her head. He said, "Yes, Hinata-chan, I'm back," with gleaming eyes. With a fierce blush on her face, she put her arms around his neck and pulled him down after grinning. She whispered, "I wasn't awake for the first one," and then she kissed him. The room reverberated with the sound of katanas being used on staff. During their sparring session, Naruto assisted Konohamaru in honing his form and speed. While Naruto was wearing short red pants and a black muscle shirt that exposed his arms to Hinata's delight, Konohamaru was happy to be wearing his typical attire. At the moment, they were in Naruto's mansion's left wing, the dojo. Thwack, clash, clash. The sound of Konohamaru's butt being struck by the flat portion of a katana. Naruto yelled, "Konohamaru," as he observed the ninja massaging his butt. Konohamaru muttered, "You're too good. Nonsense. You're not concentrating. Once in a while your thoughts waver, and you blush red," said Naruto. Hiruzen and Hinata were sitting on the floor watching, a pot of tea close by with 2 freshly poured cups, when Konohamaru stopped dead in his tracks and looked up. Naruto said gravely, "And that is when I take advantage." Focus Konohamaru, before smiling a little and wiping perspiration from his face. Naruto smiled, "But I don't blame you for thinking about Hanabi." Konohamaru looked at him with wide eyes and made a choked sound. Konohamaru's face was flushed with shame, and Hiruzen and Hinata both laughed. Believe me, those hyuga women are irresistible, Naruto chuckled, giving Hinata a playful wink. Picking up her teacup and taking a sip, Hinata blushed slightly and giggled. Now focus, Naruto said, becoming solemn and rushing. They struck fast, moved swiftly. With a slash overhead, Naruto made Konohamaru duck. After sliding back, Konohamaru launched an offensive with Enma in his Monkey King bar form. With a swift thrust, he pushed Naruto back. As their weapons clashed, Naruto roared, "Good," and stopped Konohamaru's charge, pushing away. When Konohamaru faltered a little, Naruto swooped in like a lion to make the kill. Konohamaru's staff was out of position after 2 hits. With his blade aimed at the heart, Naruto took a step forward. Sweat trickled down his face and he paused, panting. "Good work, Konohamaru, take a break and we'll continue," replied Naruto. After Konohamaru nodded, Enma changed back and started discussing his form with him. Naruto approached Hinata, who smiled and tossed him a bottle of water. Naruto returned the smile, sighing as he drank intently, finishing half the water bottle. He shook his head wildly as he poured the remaining water over his head. Unbeknownst to him, Hinata froze, then her tongue started to move, licking her lips with a red flush on her face like a lion eyeing food. When Naruto whipped off his shirt and tossed it aside after drying his face, her blush only got deeper. Hiruzen laughed as Naruto stretched without realizing how it affected his fiancée. Konohamaru just gazed at Naruto in wonder. Envious, Konohamaru said, "Whoa, how did you get your body to look so good?" Naruto flexed his arm muscles and smiled. Hinata looked longingly over him. Broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a well-defined six-pack on the chiseled torso. Hinata joyfully savored the glistening, heaving body. Hard work in order to be at peak physical condition. And lots of vegetables and barely ramen. Because sometimes you cannot always rely on chakra to allow you to overpower your opponent, and so I worked to become strong muscle-wise, but not having my muscles too bulky as that would slow you down. The secret is to be strong, but also lean, stated Naruto. Before Naruto's katana struck him on the thigh, not lightly, either, Konohamaru's eyes grew distant. Konohamaru rubbed frantically and gave a loud yelp. As he advanced to attack, Naruto yelled, "Yes, Hanabi would be impressed. Now concentrate, Konohamaru." With a hint of blood leaking from her left nostril, Hinata's eyes followed Naruto, her red face sporting a dreamy expression. Hiruzen looked at her and smiled. The impact Naruto was having on his fiancée was entirely unknown to him. "Oh, if only she had seen me in my prime. Now that was a sight to behold," Hiruzen grumbled. The days that followed were devoted to preparation and training. Naruto had joined his Anbu squad and was working hard. Tiger was the leader. He was driven, professional, and confident without being arrogant. Mole was simply a soft-spoken, somewhat hidden person, but you listened to him when he spoke. He was also skilled with poison, small daggers, subtle killing, and, when necessary, his own katana. Crane was the last one. She was their range specialist and possessed exceptional bow and arrow skills. She was able to strike a target in the forehead at a distance of 50 meters. They collaborated to build bonds and chemistry by working on the simulator together, operation after operation. A mission came as the group started to gel and teamwork took hold. Tsunade forced Hinata to use sophisticated medical procedures. Tsunade taught Sakura, Hinata, and Ino as much as she could in her spare time, pouring all of her knowledge into their minds. Hinata spent many hours perspiring over thick theory books in search of a remedy for a medical condition or, occasionally, a poison. A few days later, Naruto and Hinata were sitting on a bench in a remote park when an Anbu member suddenly materialized beside them. He gave Naruto a scroll and vanished as soon as he did. With a worried expression on her face, Hinata questioned, "You're already going for your first mission for Anbu?" Naruto glanced at the mission scroll and nodded. Hinata was permitted to be in the vicinity of the scroll but was not allowed to read it since she was placed on the ANBU's whitelist for knowing Naruto's identity as Fox. Hinata's lilac eyes were fixed on him as she asked, "Does this mission involve Akatsuki?" Her fears were validated by Naruto's silence. Her eyes were sad but worried as she gazed at him. Naruto gestured to her while shoving the scroll into his pocket. He put his arms around her as she approached and sat on his lap. "I don't want you to be worried just because I'm in Anbu. We are well trained, and plus a few teams are going, from both Konoha and Suna. There'll be plenty of highly trained ninjas to keep me safe," he stated. Hinata muttered, "I'm just worried, that's all." Naruto smiled and said, It's okay to be worried. Just trust that I'll be back. Hinata grinned and nodded. I believe that you'll come back to me, she replied. After giving her a gentle kiss, Naruto helped Hinata stand up. Come on. I still have a few hours before I have to get ready. What do you want to do? Replied Naruto. Hinata wrinkled her nose thoughtfully before smiling. Cinnamon rolls. She exclaimed with delight. Naruto smiled at his contented fiancé. He said, all right, let's go, darling, and they left hand in hand. As Naruto emerged from the shower that evening, he mentally and physically readied himself. He was ready to start getting ready, so he pulled on boxers and dried himself. He put on a vest that had pockets that could hold several scrolls after putting on a simple black shirt. Before fastening a weapon holster to his right thigh, he put on lightweight cargo pants. He fastened his belt firmly before putting on the standard Anbu armor. He tightened the armor at the points where the shoulder straps met the breastplate. Two small hidden blades were concealed beneath the black painted steel bracers that had been infused with chakra seals. His hands were covered with skin, tight black gloves. He made sure his weapon pouch was both full and well organized by packing shuriken and kunai inside. He went to his scroll shelf and took out a number of scrolls from where they were resting and shoved them into his pockets. In order to make his katana less noticeable, he strapped it to his back vertically before turning to face his weapon cabinet. At last, he put on his Anbu robe in its full length. He approached a wooden panel and gave it a slight push, causing it to slide away and expose his Anbu mask. He extended his arm and took the porcelain mask, pressing it against his face. As the cold porcelain settled and wound itself around his chakra, he felt it touch his features. Fox had taken Naruto's place. He pulled up his hood and shushined to his home's roof before making his way toward Anbu headquarters. This mission was being carried out by multiple teams. It was a high-risk operation that needed the assistance of multiple Anbu groups. They were to infiltrate a crucial Akatsuki base that was constructed underground on the edge of the land of Earth as members of the assassination squad. Along with being a virtual maze, it had tunnels and numerous air vents. Sneaking in would be difficult. Their target was a high-ranking official who was crucial to the operations in that region but was not a member of Akatsuki. He was known as Shin, and his passing would be very helpful in the battle against Akatsuki. Eliminating as many of Shin's lieutenants as they could was their secondary goal. One team was moving in to support the assault team from within the enemy ranks, while the other two assassination teams were entering. The infiltration team would move in and look for any information that could be found, including important documents. They would plant specially made scrolls that are overflowing with chakra as their secondary information. They would supply explosions to destroy the base in addition to causing damage and crippling it. To create a distraction and allow the assassination and infiltration team to sneak into the base undetected, another team was made up of Anbu from Suna and Konoha. They had to provide a sufficient distraction so that the other teams could enter covertly. This large-scale mission involved 24 Anbu in total. They were designated Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 because 8 members of the assassination division would be involved. As a member of Alpha 1, Naruto was assigned to the infiltration team. The distraction would be demonstrated by Kappa 1, 2, and 3. To assist with the operation, Suna had 2 Anbu teams. Speaking to the crowd gathered in the assembly hall was Tsunade. Anbu. This is a highly dangerous operation. You know your objectives. You know what is at stake here for both Sungakure and Konohagakure. The Kazekage and I are counting on you. Dismissed? Tsunade responded. The Anbu teams all bowed together before taking off. The trip to the operation site would take 2 days, plus an additional 2 days for preparation and execution. In the dead of night, they departed. One day after the departure of the Anbu, Tsunade sat in her Hokage chair. A raven flew in with a note wrapped around its claw as sunlight streamed into her office. She did it fast. Itachi, she pondered. Since messages could be intercepted, Itachi rarely took the chance of sending them. He only took action when it was absolutely necessary. Her heart stopped when she opened the little note. Get your Anbu back right away. The adversary is aware of your approach. Before Tsunade's ninja instincts took over, she appeared stunned. 2 Anbu stepped to attention from concealed locations throughout the room as she swiftly flicked her wrist. The only people in the village who could be of assistance are the Konoha 10. Practically every Anbu member and ninja are on a mission. Tsunade yelled, Anbu, get me the Konoha 10 and anyone else available. Yes, Hokage. Sama, they exclaimed before vanishing. Tsunade opened a drawer and took out a scratchy with a trembling hand. She froze, revealing 3 of the same symbol with her fingernail. She had prevailed. With the exception of Naruto, the Konoha 10 stood in silence. Tsunade examined each one before erecting a soundproof wall around the space. What I ask you to do is an S-ranked mission. Haste is of the essence, and what I say here does not leave the room, she said with seriousness. After a few seconds, the group's murmurs subsided as they noticed Tsunade's grave expression. About a day ago, a joint strike team of Anbu from Sungakure and Konohagakure set out to eliminate a very high-profile target. However, due to information received, we believe it to be a trap. Most likely the Anbu team has been eliminated or captured. It is up to you to infiltrate the base and extract all surviving Anbu. The secondary target is to kill the target the Anbu were aiming for, Ryanyoku Shin, stated Tsunade. Hyuga Neji. Tsunade exclaimed. Neji took a bold step forward, gazing directly ahead. You will be in charge of this team. Bring everyone home, and as many survivors as you can, stated Tsunade. Neji turned to face the gathered group and said, I will do my best. We meet at the front gate at 10, so an hour from now. Take time to gather all essential equipment and supplies, said Neji. They gave a nod and proceeded swiftly, one by one. Hinata. Tsunade exclaimed hastily. Everyone was staring at Hinata as she paused. After giving a nod, they departed before she turned to face Tsunade and approached the desk. The strength and power were gone, replaced by the weary and slightly melancholy eyes of a woman concerned for her family as Tsunade raked a weary hand through her hair and clenched her eyes before opening them. Whatever you do, Hinata, you must extract Fox at all costs. That is your objective, everything and everyone else is secondary. This is not a request, but an order, stated Tsunade. The firm orders caused Hinata's eyes to widen. She paused. Tsunade let out a sigh. I have to order you to do this, Hinata. If he falls into Akatsuki's hands, thousands will die. If you have to choose between saving Fox and Neji, save Fox. I will take complete responsibility. My orders, my responsibility, Tsunade firmly stated. After blinking multiple times, Hinata grudgingly nodded. She had terrible posture and even more deflated shoulders. Good girl. Fox cannot fall into Akatsuki's hands. Thousands will die if they realize who he is, replied Tsunade. After nodding and leaving, Hinata turned around, her eyes gleaming with the faintest of unshed tears. Tsunade. Sama, why did you let Naruto in Anbu? You knew he would be on such dangerous missions, why risk him? Replied Hinata. Tsunade gave her a sorrowful glance. She took out her hidden supply of sake from her drawer. She took out a tiny cup, filled it with a tiny bit of the alcoholic beverage, and took a deep sip. She sighed contentedly and turned back to Hinata. I had no choice. It is a risk that must be taken, to fast-track Naruto's development. The showdown with Akatsuki will definitely happen soon. Anbu was the fastest way to speed up Naruto's development even more. They have the finest equipment and ninjas available, which in turn will push Naruto to new heights. Naruto is our trump card in this fight, and the stronger he gets, the better chance Konohagakure has for survival, stated Tsunade. The pale beauty scowled before acknowledging the Hokage's wisdom with a nod. She straightened her back and strode out, saying, I understand, Tsunade. Sama, I will see you soon, with Naruto. A ghostly smile came from Tsunade's mouth. She muttered, if anyone can save Naruto, it's you, Hinata. She poured herself another cup and sighed. She hesitated before bringing it to her lips. She muttered, it must be you, and then she started to drink. Then, as a backup plan, she looked at a talisman she had always kept on her desk. Hinata touched down at the front gate's entrance. In record time, she had prepared and packed. The Hyuga Kunoichi was prepared to kick ass with their full arsenal. Her eyes had become determined, confident, and focused. You'll be saved, Naruto-kun. I swear, she cursed. She was the first to frown. She let out a sigh and paced for a few minutes before Neji touched down beside her. Worried? Neji inquired. With their relationship having improved in the 2.5 years since Naruto's departure, Hinata gave him a gentle glance. Even though Neji was still somewhat rigid and tense, he had greatly relaxed and was no longer the ice cube that he had been. A bit, yes. Too bad Naruto is on a training trip, we could really use him at this moment, said Hinata. Neji nodded in agreement, saying, he would be a valuable addition to the team. The ninjas came over the course of the next 2 minutes. Last to arrive, Shikamaru wrapped his arms in bandages. Mission mode activated, his lazy attitude gone. With Neji's, let's move, order, the ninjas took off. With a great sigh from the village of sand, Gaara placed his feet up on the desk and the pile of papers next to him was completed. With a contented expression, he reclined in his chair and looked forward to spending the remainder of the afternoon unwinding. Gaara noticed that a red talisman on his desk began to flash. When his chair hit the floor, he quickly formed another chair out of the sand he had conjured from a nearby gourd, which held him upright. He got to his feet, poured chakra into the talisman, and a wall nearby turned into a portal. He went down into the portal, nodding to his Anbu guards who were hidden there. He was transported by the portal to a dimly lit hallway with a door at the end. He opened the door with the Suna symbol on it and shut it behind him as he walked calmly down the hallway. He walked into the spacious meeting room, where a large pentagonal table was illuminated by tubes of visible blue chakra. Chakra candles were also used to light the space, and neither the table nor the space appeared to run out of chakra. The earth herself was the source of power in that room. It had been a gathering spot for all of the cages since Gaara had known about it. He sat down at his place after noticing Senju Tsunade, the Gondame Hokage, seated there. Tsunade said, "Cage, Sama, I hope you are well." Gaara gave a nod. Gaara said courteously, "I hope you are in good health as well, Hokage, Sama." Tsunade smiled. With the help of Naruto and Hinata, who had transformed him, she had developed a close friendship with Gaara, who had helped to transform Sungakure and solidify their alliance. "It will only be the two of us today, but let's get serious," replied Tsunade. Gaara nodded once more. "A man who doesn't say much. The Anbu team we sent to destroy the Akatsuki base has been a failure," she stated. Gaara leaned forward as his eyes grew wide. "Uchiha Itachi sent me a message a day after they had left, signaling a trap. Somehow, somewhere there is someone who has infiltrated our information and spy network. I have already overhauled my network, searching for a possible mole. I suggest you do the same. However, this is not the only thing. I am sending shinobi to extract the Anbu. You recall Uchiha Naruto, and the Kyuubi no Kitsune sealed within him?" replied Tsunade. "Yes," Gaara said, "I remember him." Tsunade braced herself and said, "He was one of the Anbu sent on this mission." "You fool," exclaimed Gaara, getting to his feet. "You send Naruto on a mission, which is basically a giant flea trap for Akatsuki to capture him," replied Gaara. Early replied, "I will explain my reasons at a later date, however, I need to know whether you can provide support." "I have already sent 3 teams who will be heading towards the operation base," replied Tsunade. Gaara racked his brains and scowled. "The only Junin I can spare is Temari. I might be able to provide another Anbu team, but I'm not sure. But I can definitely at least send Temari," stated Gaara. Tsunade gave a nod. Temari was a talented ninja, but she had hoped for more. Tsunade said, "I'll keep you informed if anything changes." Gaara got up and walked back to his office, nodding goodbye. With a flick of his hand, an Anbu stepped forward into his office. Gaara pulled his seat up and sat down, saying, "Rat, see if there are any extra Anbu teams available, and send for Temari." "As you command, Cage, Sama," said Rat, and he vanished. Gaara then opened his drawer after shooing the other Anbu bodyguard out. He used his sand to pick the lock on a hidden compartment in his drawer and took out a cup and a bottle of sake. He filled a cup and took a sip while soothingly closing his eyes. Gaara asked himself aloud, "I wonder whether the Hokage drink." He muttered, "Probably not, knowing how responsible she is." A day before, the smallest glimmer of chakra that identified the genjutsu was visible only to Crane, who saw it first. The air vent that circulated through the building was visible when she let go of the genjutsu. Large wind fans and 4 other main vents operated beneath the base, making it impossible to suffocate or poison it. One by one, they entered after breaking through the vent's cover. They moved swiftly into the area, masking the sounds of their movements with a sound barrier bubble. They descended into the base, hidden underground, crawling swiftly through the vents. Proceeding to the intersection on the left, then the right, then the left, then the right. The strategy relied heavily on memorization, with Tiger setting the standard. It was his duty as the leader to make sure he understood the proper procedure. He had to be sure that the other Anbu members did not make a mistake, even though they all knew the layout by heart. Rabbit gestured downward as the tiny, claustrophobic vent opened up a little. Then, as quietly as he could, he began using a kunai to drill a hole. The target was reading some papers in the main dining hall, a large, open space, when he put his face against the wall. Rabbit nodded, sensing that there were no chakra signatures nearby, and the Anbu swiftly slammed chakra into the vent, causing it to collapse. Crane's bow and arrow were already out when they fell, and as she did, an arrow smashed into his forehead. The target vanished in a cloud of smoke after the Anbu team landed lightly on the table and stared at him. A shadow clone, Mole hissed, scanning the area. The room had a big table and lots of chairs, and it was lit by torches. Ninjas, however, arrived to trap them at two entrances that faced north and south beyond the lights. Shin smirked evilly as he strode up with assurance. Despite the large number of ninjas, Fox could see that many of them were also regular bandits. Or cannon fodder, as the Kyuubi liked to refer to them. Fools, you fell right into my trap, he grinned. Ryanyoku Shin, Tiger muttered, giving him a fierce look. Tiger looked around. There were no other ways out. Kill them all, Shin yelled, taking a step back. Ninjas charged in two waves, coming from both sides. Crane shot an arrow from the north side, and the first man instantly jerked back. Fox placed his hands in a familiar hand seal and looked around. Kage Bushin no Jutsu, he said quietly, and 20 clones materialized all around them. The room instantly turned into a battleground. As the ninjas approach, Fox and his clones launch waves of shuriken and kunai. With their own weapons flying through the air, the Akatsuki ninjas responded. A number of Fox's clones were eliminated, and the weapons of some Akatsuki ninjas killed or wounded others. Crane drew 2 arrows and leapt into the air. She fired, using hand seals quickly and flinging her bow into the air. She uttered the words, Kage Arrow no Jutsu, so rapidly. As the front ninjas jumped out of the way, 2 arrows became 20. Not so fortunate were those behind them, as multiple people were pierced by the lethal arrows. Crane caught her bow as he landed with a flourish. Fox repeated the phrase, Kage Bushin no Jutsu, as 10 more clones seemed to appear in place of the ones that had been dispelled. He repeated, Sharingan, as the world grew slower. Mole threw a few poisoned senbons that were concealed from his sleeves. One small drop of poison was completely lethal. When it pierced 2 unfortunate bandits, the toxin immediately caused them to scream in agony as it processed through their bodies. Then Mole leapt into the air and threw another wave. 8 bandits and 5 Akatsuki ninjas were killed in 3 seconds. Then they clashed as the distances drew closer. Except for Crane, the Anbu drew katanas, and they clashed. There was no room or space for ninjutsu. It was close combat kenjutsu and taijutsu. One slash, then another, and Tiger ducked. He rolled forward off the table and away from 3 more kunai after parrying one. With his katana slashing out at the ninja's throat, he leapt over a leg sweep. After kicking another ninja out of his chest, he slipped past a bandit's defense and slashed him in the chest. He was attacked by a bandit with a huge club that was swinging wildly. His haphazard style drove Tiger back, and his comrades made room for him. He made a powerful swing, but Tiger only needed that. Tiger ran his katana through him as he drew his arms back for another blow. In the interim, Alpha 2 hurried through the air vent while keeping a close ear out for adversaries. They swiftly landed after opening the grate that led to the training rooms. The training rooms were located at the base's base, and they would use explosive tags to bring down the building at the very end, destroying the base. After a swift landing, they got to work, focusing on pillars in particular. Unable to respond in time, an Anbu was destroyed almost immediately by a hail of shuriken and kunai. One by one, a series of traps exploded in the training room. Weapons, fireballs, and massive boulders and rocks swung in all directions. The 3 Anbu that were still alive dodged. A viciously carved log caught one and impaled him as it swept across the room. After narrowly avoiding the final shuriken trap, the 2 survivors spun to the entrance, where 20 ninjas smiled at them. After exchanging curses, the 2 Anbu drew their katanas. In the interim, with the help of a Suna team, the Kappa team ambushed the base's entrance. Long range support would be supplied by the other Suna team. Junins fell quickly, 4 in a row. After landing in the clearing, the Anbu studied the closed door to determine how to open it. But that was when the enemy attacked. A variety of thrown weapons and exploding tags bombarded them from all sides. Shuriken and kunai flew through the air, slamming into armor and flesh. Ninjas poured in from the surrounding area, and 3 were killed instantly. In response, the Anbu launched their own wave of senbon, shuriken, and kunai at the ninjas. Some evaded or employed substitution jutsus, while others succumbed to the weapon attacks. They were attacked from all sides, and weapons were drawn. Crow, the Kappa leader, widened his eyes. They were greatly outnumbered and surrounded on all sides as he looked around. Then he understood. Everything had been a ruse. The Junin 4 had served as bait. Mission has been compromised. Pull back at once, he yelled. He shouted, retreat, and ducked beneath a katana slice. After deflecting the ninja's sword with his katana, he spun around and slashed at the leg. The slash knocked him off balance, and the ninja was unable to block the blow. Then, with a swift stab, Crow thrust his katana roughly through the ninja's abdomen. He barely avoided a flying fire dragon that slammed into the ground behind him as he pulled out the blade. His team was overwhelmed when he turned around. One Anbu let out a cry of agony as a genjutsu struck her, but she was knocked unconscious right away. Damn it, mumbled Crow as he ran. The remaining members of the Anbu team continued to fight, attempting to make their way out. A number of them were able to break out of the pincer trap and enter the forest. However, the remaining gaps were promptly closed. The Anbu died there. While the rest lay dead in the cold blood, the 3 remaining Anbu were dragged away, unconscious, the doors opening into the base. Akatsuki ninjas surrounded the 9 dead Anbu bodies. The remaining Anbu retreated from the scene of the carnage, disappearing from view. The mission didn't work out. With his head thumping and yelling at him in agony, Fox opened his eyes. He gripped his head and groaned. He shook his head in an attempt to get his bearings. He then recalled cutting 2 ninjas, avoiding a katana slash that would have severed his head, and then being struck in the chin by a chakra-powered kick that sent him crashing into the adjacent wall. Before he could respond, he was knocked unconscious by a tonfa strike that followed. He raised his head to watch the remaining ninjas gather in front of the Anbu. Since he had been knocked out, his clones had vanished, overpowering them. He saw Crane sidestep an outstretched blade, knocking the ninja to the ground, then quickly pull out an arrow and shoot at a nearby ninja, striking him in the forehead. After strangling another ninja with her bowstring, she screamed as a katana sliced through her from behind. As Crane used her remaining strength to twist her bow and strangle the Akatsuki ninja, Fox heard the snap of the neck. She dropped her bow and fell forward, slamming into the heavy timbers and the table she was standing on. She was motionless as blood gushed from her back. Fox winced before noticing Mole standing close by, motionless, and covered in innumerable gunshot wounds. Below him the stone floor was smeared with a red pool. Tiger used his katana to block a spear thrust before being knocked out by the sheer number of ninjas. Fox struggled to crawl away but was stopped in his tracks by 2 legs. Weakly, he raised his head to Shin's smiling face. He said, "Good night," before slamming his foot into Fox's head and knocking him out once more. In the grassy field where the Kyuubi sat with their tails flapping wildly, Naruto stood up. The fox uttered the word, "Fail," with a faint smile on its vulpine face. Naruto scowled at the direct demeanor of the fox. The Kyuubi remarked plainly, "It looks like you got your ass kicked." Naruto looked around and muttered, Yeah, I know. It's been some time since you visited me. I get rather lonely, you know." Naruto scowled and said, "Stop bullcrapping, Kyuubi. You're a demon." After grinning malevolently, the Kyuubi got to his feet. The Kyuubi sighed and said, "You must leave, or else they will find out who you are, and then we will both perish." "Ah, lovely. Chakra shackles." "I know, I'll think of something." "Chakra shackles?" asked Naruto. "Oh, crap." As it disappeared from view, the Kyuubi grinned and said, "Well anyway, you better think fast, because your wake-up call is right here." When Fox came to, he realized that he was in a big cell, and as his eyes gradually adapted to the little light, he saw that there were 3 unconscious prone bodies of Anbu lying in the cell as well. He also saw that his wrists were bound with chakra chains, which were special chains that prevented breakage and allowed him to perform jutsu, and that his ankles were also bound tightly, but with chains. His weapons and clothing were gone. He was only wearing his pants, and his pockets were empty, until he was kicked in the ribs, which caused him to groan. The ninja smiled at him and spat, "Awake finally are you?" The man, unnerved by the emotionless Anbu mask, kicked Fox hard in the head, and Fox shook away his unconsciousness as he watched the ninja wake the other 3 ninja. Fox just stared back, without saying anything. "Well, the fortunate ones are your fallen comrades. We always enjoy a little sport," the ninja smiled. A group of ninjas entered the cell with a smile on their faces, and all 4 Anbu eyes turned to them. "Don't kill them, but hurt them," the ninja stated. "We need to get information from these scum, and Shin wants them to suffer." Everyone nodded and smiled. The ninja adamantly repeated, "No weapons or blades, just beat them to a pulp." The group nodded again, and Fox moaned as 3 came toward him, 2 dragging him up by the arms and the 3rd slamming his fist into his ribs. The 3 laughed. "Not so tough now are you without your weapons," was a taunt directed at the person who had struck him. Fox immediately used his strength to shake himself free from the 2 holding him. head-butting the ninja fiercely with his head, and as he fell to the ground, the mask slammed into his forehead, cutting the ninja open. He then shifted his weight to the left, jumping and drop-kicking the other ninja away, and he hit the ground hard before the final ninja slammed his knee into his back, causing Fox to groan in agony as he was hauled up. The ninja behind him smiled, easy muscles, and then Fox's nose touched his back. The ninja's curse was like music to his ears, and he found himself hitting the cold stone hard once more as the ninja holding him dropped him. He waited for all three of the ninja to come at him with a vengeance, and they hit him mercilessly, and he could only lie there helpless and silent, refusing to give them the satisfaction of hearing him scream in pain. The world rocked when the first kick struck his skull, and then his gut, causing him to lose his breath. Then his back, another fist, a face, and a torso. The beating went on until they finally stopped, breathing heavily, and they lifted Fox's broken body up, lifting his arms and the chains onto a nearby hook, suspending him by his wrists in the air, the chains digging into his wrists and his head hanging limply. Strolling forward, one of the three raised his head and looked directly into Fox's eyes. He slammed a final fist into his ribs after saying, "Enjoy yourself, for that was only the beginning." Fox hung there lean and shivered in agony, his vision hazy as he heard the last screams of his comrades' beatings and watched the three leave, and then everything went dark. It would take a while to get to the mission grounds, so Neji led the team as fast as they could. After 8 hours, he halted the group, but Hinata paced around, obviously nervous. Sakura looked at the pacing Kunoichi and said, "Hinata, you need to calm down." Hinata glanced up at Sakura, then nodded and sat down slowly. Time was of the essence, so each ninja took a 30-minute break before continuing, eating a food pill before stopping to rest. Neji promptly set out for them to take turns in pairs to keep a lookout, and they ate their food quickly before going to sleep. Hinata took watch first, and Neji sat next to her, making sure to occasionally activate their Byakugan to scan for any enemies. Neji concluded, "You seem worried, Hinata.sa, Hinata." Instead of using the Sama prefix, Hinata had insisted that Neji just call her Hinata. "My only concern is for the Anbu. I hope they're all okay," she said, adding that missions that go wrong can really get ugly. A hand was placed on her shoulder by Neji. "Everything will be alright. All we have to do is cooperate and look out for one another," Neji said. After giving a nod, Hinata turned on her Byakugan. "Neji," Hinata stated, "there is a single individual approaching us directly from the southwest." Neji activated his Byakugan and got to his feet. Neji stated, "Only one of them." The two hyuga were staring intently in the distance when Shikamaru woke up to prepare for his watch. "What's going on?" Shikamaru inquired. Neji said, "Someone is coming our way." With a nod, Shikamaru leapt into the trees. Shikamaru said, "Lure them near the fire," from his position. The Junin landed beside the campfire a few minutes later, and a shadow made contact with the Junin a second later. Before her hand reached her mouth, Tamari yelled, "Damn it Shika.kun, let go of me or so help me I will." "MMPHHHH, she muttered. After realizing she wasn't hostile, Shikamaru let go of the jutsu and landed beside her, sticking his hands in his pockets and instantly adopting his lazy demeanor. He said, "Bored, don't wake the others," and turned to leave. Tamari shook a fist at his retreating back and glared at him. "Stupid Nara," she growled. She smiled sadly as she turned to face the other two hyuga. She stated plainly, "Your reinforcements have arrived. It is good to see you Tamari.san, anyone we can use will increase our chances of success," replied Hinata. Tamari gave the teenager a smile. "Gaara simply instructed me to go toward the border and hope I could find you. What is the situation, then?" Tamari inquired. Tamari scowled as they jointly described the mission to her. "A surprise attack, Then, we'll have to move slowly as we make our way to the operation grounds. Don't mind if I go to sleep," Tamari said, waving before turning to leave the fire. "I've been traveling all day." "Hinata, go get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day," Neji said. After giving a nod, Hinata turned to go to her tent. Deer looked at the other three Anbu and said, "My chakra tripwires have kicked in." Crow cast his gaze far away. Crow instructed them to gather your weapons and prepare to ambush, as they readied themselves. With their Byakugan active, Hinata and Neji observed the ANBU's movements as the 9-leaf and 1-sand ninjas landed on the trees, just out of the ANBU's line of sight. "Are they antagonists?" Hinata inquired. Neji pumped more chakra into his eyes and said, "I'm not sure. They may be disguised Akatsuki ninjas. even though they are dressed in Anbu suits. Take Choji, Ino, and Tamari, Shikamaru, and go around to their left. Take Hinata and Sakura, Lee, and go around to their right. We'll come from the front, Neji said. The ninjas leapt away, nodding. Crow scowled, feeling the air. We're being flanked by them, Crow hissed, frontal assault, and the Anbu blasted in the direction of the main group. Neji and his group were prepared to accept, but the Anbu abruptly stopped and took a non-threatening stance. Neji's eyes narrowed as he said, "State your intentions. Your eyes make it obvious that you are from Konoha. Here, I'm Crow, the Anbu leader." As the other two teams landed next to them once more, Neji gestured with his hand and nodded, sensing that the Anbu was telling the truth. "I am Hyuga Neji, and we are your reinforcements. We are sent by the Hokage to extract any survivors," Neji replied. Crow gave a nod. "Come with us, we'll make plans at our camp," replied Crow. After Neji gave a nod, they made their way to the base. While being watchful, the Suna team was also discussing strategies for rescuing their fallen teammates. Their defeated stance vanished as they looked up, anticipating fresh reinforcements. Their leader, Monkey, said, "It's nice of you to join us, Tamari, Sama." "No Sama in the field, please. We need a way to get into their base, and we need to do it soon," Tamari responded. The group started preparing to attack the base and rescue their fellow soldiers. 2 guards from Akatsuki yawned. Several squads had been dispatched to apprehend or kill the remaining Anbu guards following the ANBU's defeat. They were immediately alerted when they caught a glimpse of a fatigued group of Akatsuki ninjas leading a number of Anbu. "Finally back, are you?" one sneered. The leader approached with a slight limp. "Just open the door," they were elusive. The Akatsuki guard turned around and said, "Fine, fine." The doors began to open with his handprint. A kunai found the guard's throat, preventing him from moving. A hyuga palm to the chest neutralized the other guard, who had dropped his defenses. The Anbu unbound them, and Neji turned to face them all. The entire Suna team assembled after emerging from the trees. Crow hissed, "You know the plan, now go." After nodding, the ninjas divided into 3 groups. Temari's Suna team would be one example. They would go after the intended target, Shin, with the intention of killing him. They turned left. Hinata and 2 Konoha Anbu would move to the right in order to liberate and remove the prisoners. To divert attention, the other members of the group would rush through the center. If the numbers got to them, they would retreat. The hallway opened up to a spacious room next door as the Suna team swiftly moved to the left. A number of Akatsuki members were idly reading or just chatting. They all stood up when the Suna team appeared, but Tamari wasn't in the mood for resistance. She needed to finish this quickly. With her hands flying into hand seals, she yelled, "Futon! Daitopa!" rapidly. The ninjas were slammed into the opposite wall by the tremendous gust of wind that came from Temari's hands. The 3 Anbu came forward as soon as she finished saying her jutsu. All 3 also began sealing rapidly. "Doden! Doryuden!" they yelled. 3 earth dragons rose from the floor, slamming into the big Akatsuki groups as tiles exploded. Tamari with her fan and the Anbu with their katanas put those who were able to avoid the dragons on the defensive right away. One bandit's neck was cracked by Temari's fan as it lashed out. Before slitting his opponent's throat with his katana, one Anbu slammed his knee into the gut of another. At 2, the other Anbu slashed, sending them to the ground in agony. 12 Akatsuki soldiers were killed in 4 seconds. The words, "Let's move," came from Tamari. Hot on her heels, the Anbu bounded after her. Hinata walked quickly down the corridor. They had clearly taken the enemy by surprise, as evidenced by the quick elimination of a few patrolling guards. The 2 Konoha Anbu struggled to keep up with Hinata as she bounded down the hallway. She was driven to even greater heights by her love for Naruto. Hinata's weakness had diminished from 2.5 years prior. She gave her all during training, honing her style and completing her skills because she wanted to make Naruto proud. She was still in a state of emotional elation after passing the Junin test a few weeks prior. When she halted, she noticed that the prison's entrance was guarded by 5 ninjas. With their katanas at the ready, the 2 Anbu advanced. "Lady Hinata, we will create an opening for you, and then we will hold the entrance as long as possible," stated one. After glancing at them, Hinata nodded. The 3 of them knew what they had to do, even though they were aware that the 2 Anbu would probably not make it through holding the entrance. "Try your hardest," she advised. With 4 ninjas charging to meet them, the Anbu leapt forward. One of the 2 Anbu stopped and turned, his hands out in a springboard motion, as Hinata ran after them. Hinata stepped on the hands and spun elegantly to propel herself upward. She hurled multiple kunai at the ninjas as she spun through the air. While they were recuperating, the Konoha Anbu managed to seriously injure one of the Akatsuki ninjas by dodging. In order to capture Hinata in midair, the final ninja leapt forward. When Hinata saw it, she stumbled to meet him. Her other hand pushed his kunai hand away, creating an open path to his chest as she dodged his fist with a last-minute head juke. He was instantly killed when her palm struck his heart. She spun in the air and landed in the open doorway after pushing off with her palm on her now dead enemy's chest. She turned and fled after glancing at the Konoha Anbu, who now faced much more equal odds. She threw multiple kunai with explosive tags at the heavy door that was close by, causing it to crack beneath the explosions. Then, with chakra smeared on her palms, she charged at the door. Debris flew as her hands slammed into the door, smashing them. Hinata's eyes widened as she slid to a stop. The remaining Anbu were hanging on the wall by their wrists. The Anbu was in such a sorry state that her eyes were met with cuts and bruises of all sizes. "Fox!" she yelled as she rushed ahead. With a slight stir, the figure in the center raised his head. The porcelain was cool to the touch as Hinata hurried over to him and tightly cupped his masked cheek. With concern, she inquired, "Are you okay?" "Never better," was Fox's raspy response, as he coughed a little. Hinata muttered, "We need to get out of here," and raised Fox's body so he could unhook the chain. Fox sagged into her embrace, resting his entire weight on Hinata, who used chakra to support herself. She whispered, "Damn, you're heavy," and gently lowered him to the ground. Then she made a familiar pose with her hands. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Alongside the original, 10 Hinatas showed up and assisted the other Anbu in removing the chains. But while her clones were assisting them, an Anbu member was hurled into the room, collapsing to the ground and slamming into the wall. After Hinata whirled to see the other Anbu member dash in, he was struck in the back by multiple kunai and collapsed to the ground, lifeless. 10 bandits and 5 shinobi smiled at her as they entered the door. Before turning to Hinata, she reflected, "Those 2 Anbu took out 6 of my shinobi, oh well." The leader, a female kunoichi, took the initiative. She had a savage-looking spear tied to her back and a bandage over one eye. She had on a red top and khaki short shorts. She looked at the 10 bandits and remarked, "Bandits, the one who kills her gets triple pay for 3 months." With a roar of approval, the bandits surrounded her. Hinata waved her clones away as they gazed at her anxiously. She stepped forward and said, "Protect the Anbu." The bandits, all brandishing some sort of weapon, formed a semicircle around her. In addition to the enormous mace and spear, many of them carried katanas. The final one was armed with a bow and arrow. "Get her!" the kunoichi hissed. With a roar, they charged together. When Hinata's Vaikugan activated and she straightened up, they were nearly upon her. Hinata screamed, "Kaden," before spinning and launching them to the ground. The first one came back, charging with a slash that was obviously intended to cut off Hinata's head. He fell to the ground dead after she swiftly ducked, shifted her weight forward, and slammed her palm into his chest. In order for the tip of the mace to miss face, Hinata then shifted her body weight backwards and leaned back a little. After shifting her weight forward once more and slapping his left hand punch out of the way to the left of his body with her right hand, she stepped forward and forced the bandit to drop the mace when her left palm met his elbow. Then she reached forward and killed him by slamming her palm against his heart. She shifted her weight downward as he fell, sending her foot flying and slamming into a bandit's head behind her. She then spun and twirled on the ground, smoothly sweeping one leg over the other. She then performed a handstand, avoiding the katana blade and pushing past the fallen bandit who had slashed at her from the ground with his blade. After landing, she lifted her foot and kicked him in the throat like an axe. Then she kicked another bandit away with her foot rearing to her back. She followed the bandit, shifting her weight to her left, deflecting his blade upwards with a thick chakra shield at her palm before tapping his 2 shoulders with her fingers, making them useless. Then, turning to the other bandits, she tapped the defeated bandit's forehead behind her, causing his brain to mush. As the bandit fell to the ground, she remained silent. The one who growled, "She's good," Hinata looked at them calmly but confidently, standing side on and shifting her weight to her back foot, which she brought behind her. Her left arm was held at a 90-degree angle, arm and side, palm facing them, and her right hand was held just away from the knee in front of her. Water was the inspiration for Hinata's taijutsu technique. Almost effortlessly, she changed the enemy's limbs with her keke, genkei and natural flexibility, then shifted her weight forward and finished them with a gentle tap. While some hyuga elders despised her for deviating from the traditional gentle fist style, many would argue that she was performing a dance when she executed this taijutsu. 3 months before Naruto returned for the Junin exams, she performed it for the first time. She disproved the skeptics by defeating another hyuga in a full-on taijutsu battle. Dance of the Sunlit Water was the title she had given it. She was promoted because the judges were impressed by her inventiveness and complexity. She spat, "Come at me, cowards." The rest of the bandits charged. But Hinata launched an offensive. After shifting her weight to the left and avoiding a vertical slash, she approached the man directly while holding an orb. Rasengan. When Fox looked up, he saw Hinata working on the other bandits, while the one who had eaten Hinata's Rasengan was dead, having fallen from the hole in the wall. As he watched Hinata glide elegantly across the ducking and a katana silently passed over her, he muttered, "That's hot." He saw her momentum carry her to the user, who kneed her groin and swiftly slapped away her defending hand. Before she slammed both palms against his chest, his final motion was to put his hands to his groin while opening his mouth in a girlish scream. The other shinobi were about to make their move when Fox saw them twitch. He hissed, "Damn it," as the 2 Hinata clones lifted him from the agony that swept through his body. Then he saw one of the shinobi flick his wrist, sending a kunai in the direction of Hinata's clones. The Hinata clone moved in front of Naruto as 2 kunai made their way directly toward him, one arm wrapped around her petite frame for support. Before her eyes widened at the blade sticking out of her stomach, the Hinata clone caught the kunai. After the clone vanished in a cloud of smoke, the other released Fox to take a ready position. The original Hinata saw that her clones were dying, but she was too busy being harassed by the 4 bandits who were obviously seasoned and veterans of their trade to respond or produce more. Fox swore as he was quickly released and made his way directly to the ground. He was too hurt to move at all. He let out a painful scream as he fell hard to the ground. "Fox!" exclaimed Hinata, momentarily distracted before a foot struck her face and knocked her to the ground. When Fox looked up and saw the other Hinata clone vanished, he grimaced. He also saw the remaining Anbu being swiftly killed by the other 3 shinobi. Beside her comrade, the female kunoichi waltzed over. The ninja jerked to Hinata, who had slain another bandit, saying, "It's clear this one means something to the girl, if her reaction is anything to go by it." The other shinobi smiled and asked, "What shall we ever do to this scum then?" "Pick him up," she commanded. To restrict the amount of oxygen Fox could breathe, the ninja pulled him up and put an arm around his throat. She yelled, "Hey! Whore!" The female shinobi. With the chakra visible from her palm, Hinata slammed her chakra enhanced palm onto the final bandit's face, sending him to the ground lifeless. Then she turned slowly to the 5 shinobi. The female shinobi pointed to Fox, who was struggling weakly and had lost all of his strength from his previous beatings, and asked, "What does this one mean to you?" For a brief moment, Hinata's eyes widened, but the kunoichi saw it and smiled. "Weakness. Feelings. Take advantage of it. Ninjas are nothing but tools. You should never get attached to any one tool. All men are tools as well, simply there to be used at whim, serving your every beck and call," laughed the kunoichi. Hinata asserted, "Ninjas are people, not just tools." She walked over to Fox and said, "That kind of thinking is what will doom you, little whore. We have your man and there's nothing you can do." As she heard Hinata growl, she smiled and ran a hand across Fox's chest, taunting him, "Such a great physique, I wonder how hard he works out." "That slut has no right to touch my man," Hinata thought angrily. "Come on, I must do this while she is preoccupied. Ignore your fatigue and the pain." "Yes. The chains are off." With blood streaming from his wrists where he had wriggled free of the chains, Naruto thought. Fox, gasping for air, merely mumbled something to the female kunoichi. Whispering, "I am the bone of my sword," Naruto felt the Kyuubi's chakra return to his body, gradually repairing the damage. Observing Hinata's enraged expression, she grinned and said, "Firm muscles too. I may just keep this one as one of my toys." The kunoichi gestured to the bandits' dead bodies and said, "No one can save you, little girl. Go back to mommy and daddy, and I'll let you go free, since I don't have to pay those fools." Hinata calmly declared, "I will not leave him behind," but this only infuriated the kunoichi. With a kunai in her hands, she raised it to Fox's neck and hissed, "No? Then you can have him as a corpse." "No!" exclaimed Hinata, leaping forward with her hands moving. Fox yelled, "Unlimited blade works." The world went completely dark in an instant, and then Hinata's wind slammed into the group. Fox, however, was the only person in the group to stand. Fox approached Hinata and gave her a gentle peck on the cheek before turning to face the group while wearing his fox porcelain mask. He said softly, "Welcome to my world," as a plethora of blades appeared in front of the 5 shinobi. The kunoichi mumbled, her eyes wide with terror, "How is this possible?" The reality marble came to an end as the blades sped forward. In the real world, Fox fell heavily to his knees before Hinata caught him, just managing to keep him standing. His head was drawn into her lap. When he allowed the Anbu mask to be pulled, her hand grasped it and removed it. Naruto gazed at her, his blue eyes gleaming with joy and pride but also exhaustion. Hinata grinned at him despite the drop of blood on the corner of his mouth. Naruto remarked, "You looked hot out there." At that point, Hinata only recalled throwing her ripped jacket in front of a bandit, using it as a cover to kill him by pressing her palm against his chest. She was therefore only wearing a form-fitting black shirt that had a few small cuts from katana swipes on it that could be seen on her pale white skin. Her face quickly lit up, but she returned the smile. She lifted his head to meet her lips and whispered, "I just want to look good for you." As Hinata's head raised to see Kiba and Akamaru enter the room, they were millimeters away from each other when they heard a startling noise. The Anbu member wrapped around Hinata's shoulder caused Kiba to blink in surprise. "Fox is the only survivor, unfortunately. I was outnumbered. The other 2 Anbu died holding the entrance," Hinata stated with sorrow. Kiba ran a hand through his hair and sighed, "More fatalities." "It's okay, Hinata-chan. You did your best, and you at least saved one. We're pulling out now." Shiro was killed by Damari, in the bathroom doing his business ironically. Most of the defenders were killed, but a few slipped through in your direction. "I'm glad you're okay though." "Come on then, let's go," replied Kiba. "Please, my equipment," Fox said softly. Hinata nodded, and they found the storage room with Kiba's assistance. Without the Akatsuki touching his vest, Kiba and Hinata assisted Fox. As it sat there with the rest of the looted equipment, it was obvious that they would examine it later. Then, as Hinata looked around, she discovered his bracers, armor, and katana, which she promptly sealed into a scroll. He then put on his long black Anbu cloak. Naruto went to the base's entrance, where the remaining rookie 10 and Anbu were waiting. "Rest in peace, brothers and sisters," Crow muttered as he raised both fingers to his lips. He triggered his chakra, causing the base to collapse in on itself and the soil to ripple from an underground explosion. Without saying a word, Crow said, "Let's go." Later, they would pay tribute to their fallen comrades. Later, Fox would be healed by Sakura and Hinata, allowing him to travel. As they returned, there was little conversation in a somber atmosphere, with each ninja lost in their own thoughts. But when Fox and Hinata were by themselves, they would spend time together in silence, holding hands or conversing softly. According to the rules, they were not allowed to disclose that Naruto was in Anbu. Tsunade took out the scratchy early the following morning, her hand trembling from the coin. The amount of sleep she had received was evident from the bags under her eyes. She took a deep breath and scratched the 3 circles that the reflective material covered. Then she exhaled a sigh of calm. She was defeated. Then she unlocked her secret cabinet, revealing a little stack of sake. She took out her little drinking cup and poured a little drink for herself. She drank deeply and let out a sigh. She ran a hand through her hair and muttered, "I would expect heavy casualties, especially to the Anbu. It really weakens Konoha now." The doors of the Hokage office opened at that moment, and Shizune entered with Taunton, who squealed with delight upon seeing Tsunade. For a moment, Tsunade grinned as Shizune disappointed Taunton. The curious pig strode towards Tsunade and leapt into her open embrace. Tsunade embraced the adorable giant, who oinked contentedly. Gazing at Tsunade, Shizune inquired, "Any news?" Tsunade replied, "Nothing, but other missions have gone well." After giving a nod, Shizune left, probably to fetch Tsunade additional documents. Tsunade said, "It'll be okay, won't it, Taunton?" to the pig. Taunton just oinked contentedly and nuzzled her with its muzzle. Tsunade sighed, "I'm glad you're so optimistic, Taunton. Wish I could be." They had arrived at the gate of Konoha. After a brief glance, the 2 Chunin at the gate gestured them in. The one who said, "You look like hell," Crow turned to the group after giving a simple nod. "I'll go hand the report in to Hokage Sama. I believe debriefing will be held an hour after that, so meet outside the Hokage Tower in an hour," replied Crow. The others nodded, exhausted from the lengthy journey back. "Hinata, Ino, Tenten, let's go relax in the hot springs, our usual place," said Sakura. Tenten and Ino nodded and brightened. They both exclaimed, "We'll meet you there," and took off. Hinata scowled, considering hanging out with Fox instead, but she could see he was worn out and disheveled. She smiled at Sakura as he gave her the faintest nod. Hinata replied, "Sure. I'll gather my belongings and meet you there." Sakura nodded and brightened. "See you there, Hinata," she exclaimed as she hurried away. Tamari was in front of Shikamaru. With a faint smirk on her face at Shikamaru's gaunt face, Tamari questioned, "You're not going to cry, are you?" Shikamaru muttered, "Troublesome woman," as he walked slowly away with his hands in his pockets. As she ran after him, Tamari exclaimed, "Wait, where are you going?" With a shrug, the two Suna Anbu who were still alive left for the markets. Neji and Kiba accompanied them. Fox uttered the words, "Thank you for your rescue," before vanishing into a smoke cloud. Shoji glanced at the other men. "Food anyone?" Shoji inquired. With weary nods from the others, the mission team had essentially divided. After an hour of rest, the group appeared considerably better when Tsunade stood in front of them. "I have gone through the report with Crow, and we suffered terrible losses. Over a dozen Anbu dead. A huge loss," said Tsunade. "It was a failure from the start, Hokage. Sama. They knew we were coming. Someone leaked information," stated Fox. Tsunade paced to the left and gave a grim nod. Tsunade handed Tamari a bag that was sitting on her desk and said, "We will have to look into it, and search for any possible information leaks. Tamari, Suna team. I thank you deeply for your services and your aid. Give Gaara Kazekage. Sama my deepest gratitude." The Hokage received a bow from the 5 Suna ninjas. However, the secondary mission was not so much a failure. The elimination of Shiro puts a large dent in our enemy's plans. He was a very key figure for the Akatsuki, and his death will hurt them greatly, as well as the destruction of that base, Tsunade said before turning to Fox. "And we managed to extract one captured Anbu, who was the main objective," stated Tsunade. Shikamaru questioned, "What is so important about Fox, Hokage, Sama?" Without missing a beat, Tsunade lied. He held key information into several assault plans on Akatsuki bases. It was vital that he did not fall into enemy hands. Shikamaru gave a nod. "You are all dismissed. Well done, and take a rest. You deserve it," stated Tsunade. The Kyuubi no Kitsune sat with its tail swishing as Tsunade spoke. But the rift that had slowly started to open up in his world was unusual. The Kyuubi could only see darkness through the opening, as if someone had torn a page out of the sky. Utter blackness. Nothing happened when he pushed some of his chakra in the direction of the gap. "Oh crap," he muttered. An astonished voice said, "Naruto-kun? Is that you?" Sakura was standing there, looking surprised, when Naruto turned around. Naruto grinned and said, "Sakura-chan," before making his way to the kunoichi. He stood beside her, a good head and a half taller than her, and Sakura's eyes widened. She smiled and remarked, "You've grown, Naruto-kun, not so short anymore." Naruto chuckled as he recalled his simpler times. Naruto grinned genuinely and remarked, "It's good to see you, Sakura-chan. You seem to have grown as well." "It's good to see you too, Naruto-kun. How was your training trip?" Naruto let out a sigh. "Tough," he grumbled, "Arrow. Senin trained me so hard I had to buy new clothes." Sakura chuckled as she admired his new appearance, which included a long black cargo pant with several pockets and red stripes down the sides, a fishnet shirt, and a black trench coat with a red spiral on it. Sakura frowned at the enormous amount of paperwork that was waiting for her and remarked, "You look good, Naruto-kun. It's good to have you back, but I have to run along to the hospital now." Naruto questioned, "You're a medic.nin now?" Sakura gave him a smile. She hurried away after saying, "You're not the only one who's improved. See you later." Naruto waved and grinned before moving on through the village. Sitting in his office with Hinata, Heishi questioned, "Is this really what you want to do? I have seen you blossom into a fine young woman and a powerful kunoichi, but you wish to put it on hold?" "Yes, father. I want to take 1 semester of teaching at the Konoha Academy. One day I will be taking a genin team of my own, and I want to get some experience. I will not be a full-time teacher, father, only taking classes this semester first," said Hinata. To himself, Heishi hummed. All authority had returned to him since the majority of the elders were wearing the caged bird seal. "Very well, Hinata, if it is what you want." Hinata gave her father a smile. "It is," she declared as she got up and left. Heishi grinned and gave a small shake of his head. He turned to a scroll on his desk and muttered, "They really grow up fast." Hinata informed Naruto of his choice while they were sitting quietly hand in hand on a bench in a big park. Naruto questioned, "A teacher at the academy? Before reflecting, I'm sure you'll be great at it. Hinata gave her fiancé a smile. I love children, they're almost carefree innocents. I want to teach them the best I can so that they can be the best ninjas they can be, said Hinata. They'll be awesome ninjas, taught by the one and only Hyuga Hinata, laughed Naruto. You can come in some lessons too Naruto-kun, and then we can both teach them, shouted Hinata. Naruto chuckled. As the tone of the conversation darkened, he said, I'm not sure about that Hinata. Chan. My Anbu duties might take me away from Konoha for weeks at a time. Akatsuki is moving. Our Anbu are fighting a secret war as we speak now. Hinata tightened her hold on Naruto's hand and leaned against his shoulder, asking, You'll be fine, won't you? Naruto said softly, his eyes darkening from the news the Kyuubi had given him, as long as you're with me, it'll be fine. Rewind as he approached the rift, Naruto exclaimed, What the hell is that? Really? I've never seen this before kid in my entire life, Kyuubi, now known as Kurama, uttered. And you say your chakra didn't do anything to it? Would mine work? Replied Naruto. Kurama's big head shook. It's worth a try, but I doubt it would do anything than tear more at that rift, he stated. After pumping some chakra in the direction of the rift, Naruto was absorbed by the darkness's boundless emptiness. Naruto questioned, could it be a way for you to be unsealed? Kurama gave him a startled look. I have not been home in over 200 years Kit. I don't know if this rift holds my freedom, Kurama replied. Should it hold your freedom, for the love that you hold for my parents, please do one thing and talk to me before you attempt anything, replied Naruto. Very well, until then I will monitor this disturbance. Kurama gazed at the rift for a long time as Naruto walked away. With sorrow in his red eyes, he asked, would you grant me freedom finally? The flashback has ended. When Hinata first arrived at the academy, the kids fell in love with her right away. They admired her kind and compassionate disposition as well as her straightforward teaching methods. The 10-year-olds she taught were lively and still developing. Naruto had stated that he would be gone for a while after going on another Anbu mission. Since the majority of the other kunoichi her age were busy, Hinata felt a little alone without Naruto. Sakura was working long training shifts at the hospital while Ino was out on a mission with Team 10. Along with her cousin Neji and the two green creatures from Konoha, Guy and Lee, Tenten was also on a mission. Their time with Hinata was also limited because Kiba and Shino had their own clan trainings to attend. She therefore socialized with the teachers. She particularly liked talking to Yoshida Kei, one of the teachers. Kei, a Junin teacher as well, claimed in their many conversations during breaks that he chose to remain an academy teacher because he loved teaching so much. He claimed that even though he was 20.1, he could still do more, but for the time being, he preferred to teach the younger students. Additionally, they had many common interests, so it was only natural for them to discuss a wide range of topics with one another. As the weeks passed, Hinata inadvertently became closer to Kei, discussing how Naruto had grown more aloof from Konoha because he was always on missions and rarely spent time there because of the impending war. Kei had felt sorry for her. The two teachers conversing deeply and laughing long into the night at various restaurants was a fairly common sight at night. Others observed that Hinata had changed from feeling a little lonely to happier now that Kei was keeping her company. During this time, Naruto returned to Konoha, where they spent just a few hours together before he was called to an urgent mission. Hinata scowled and went in search of Kei to talk to, and later to cry because Naruto was never there, while Kei comforted her. After the Chunin exams, Neji, a close friend of Naruto, scowled at Hinata's actions but remained silent. He had no right to dictate to Hinata who she should spend her time with. Tenten had claimed that Kei was becoming too close to Hinata, but Neji had argued that Hinata-sama should make her own choices and that he didn't care if she spent her time with a harmless person. Hinata-chan, exclaimed Kei. Kei-kun? Hinata turned from her desk and asked him. I'm tired of marking tests, so let's go eat, he exclaimed with enthusiasm. Hinata nodded and chuckled at his zeal. She said, okay, give me 5 minutes. I'll wait for you outside, Kei exclaimed with joy. While marking the tests, Hinata hummed to herself. She dismissed the feeling that something was missing before putting them away and going outside to meet Kei. Kei exclaimed, I know a great place we can go, and the two departed the academy. They both gorged themselves on the delectable Japanese barbecue while conversing long into the night while seated in a booth in an open restaurant. Hinata wasn't one to argue when Kei insisted on walking her home when it was time to go. Hinata saw a familiar blonde emerge from a posh restaurant wearing a fancy black suit and white tie as they walked through the dining area. Confused, Hinata asked, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked in their direction. Hinata was most struck by his eyes, which were filled with anguish and hopelessness. He just gave her a blink, then shook his head and turned to leave. Naruto! Exclaimed Hinata, stepping forward a little before Kei grabbed her wrist. Hinata turned to him and hissed, Kei, let me go. However, Kei gave her a sympathetic look, his brown eyes displaying a hint of sadness. He doesn't want to talk to you right now. Find him tomorrow when he's cooled down, he stated. After scowling at what he had said, Hinata turned to see Naruto had vanished. Hinata whispered, maybe you're right. I'll talk to him tomorrow. Hinata padded to her room as Kei dropped her off at the gate. As she shut the door and looked at the calendar, the eerie sensation she had been experiencing all day blossomed deeper in her chest. She then froze. Their third anniversary is May 15th. She recalled Naruto telling them that they needed to have a big celebration because they had missed their first two because he was on the training trip. She fell to her knees and mumbled, oh no, I must apologize tomorrow, I must. On the Hokage mountain, Naruto sat atop his father's head and gazed out over the village. With the moon shining in all its splendor and the stars twinkling at night, there was a reverent silence that was almost deafening. He was confused, depressed, and sorrowful. Had he not informed Hinata that he would be waiting for her in that restaurant at 7 o'clock, no matter what? Though he didn't understand, Naruto had heard from his friends that Hinata was frequently spotted in the company with another academy teacher. She loved him, didn't she? Didn't they have a marriage engagement? Even the Kyuubi remained silent as thousands of questions raced through Naruto's mind, leaving him to ponder. He heard footsteps behind him. A quiet voice said, I thought I would find you here. Glancing at her sorrowfully, Naruto questioned, Ba-chan, why does it hurt so much? With a sorrowful smile, Tsunade sat beside him and put an arm around him. Tsunade comforted her, saying, I'm sure Hinata has her reasons, Naruto-kun, it's okay. I waited in that restaurant for 4 hours, never doubting that she wouldn't show up, he said. I sat there, with music playing and happy couples all around me. I smiled as the waiter asked me several times where my date was, and I had said with confidence that she was coming. I tipped the waiter for delicious food that sat in front of me, that I didn't eat. I watched as the tables began to empty, and the waiters began to clear. And when it was closing time, the same waiter simply took my shoulder and told me it was closing time. I had smiled at him, and gave him a large tip and walked out, to his protests. Knowing that she didn't show up hurt Ba-chan. Seeing that she spent our anniversary with another man, it killed me. That's your faith in people, Naruto-kun. You always think the best of people, an admirable trait but one that sometimes leads to disappointment. That is the path you take. Leaning into Tsunade's embrace, Naruto muttered, I just returned from that mission, only to discover that I've lost the only woman that I love. What am I going to do, Ba-chan? Ba-chan? He muttered, his eyes full of unshed tears. Tsunade simply held him closer without responding. When Hinata was summoned to her father's office the following day, she was numb. She was so worn out that she was crying so hard that she was hardly able to sleep. She had heavy bags on her face and bloodshot eyes. The branch servants insisted that she see the clan head first, despite her intense desire to go find Naruto. Everyone said Hyuga Heishi knew everything. Heishi was one of those men who had the all-seeing eye and could literally know everything. As she walked into the office and took a seat, he appeared serious and grim. Father? Hinata inquired. Heishi let out a sigh to himself. With a voice as icy as ice, Heishi said, Hinata, my daughter, I have heard rumors of your actions. Hinata suppressed a shiver that went through her back at her father's voice as she looked at him in confusion. Do not think nothing escapes me, Hinata. I am your father. It is my responsibility to look out for my children. Your actions bring disrespect to the Hyuga name, Heishi continued. What? What are you talking about, father? Are you so blind that you cannot see that your relationship with Kei was clear for all to see? That you, a promised woman to another man in marriage, are openly dating another behind his back? How do you think this damages our reputation? Before everything made sense to Hinata, she froze at the accusations and felt ice run through her. Clearly, her father read her expression. Do you see now, daughter? How all of Konoha is talking about you and Kei, knowing that you are already engaged to Uchiha Naruto and yet are so loose as to mingle with others so freely? Do you know the things they say? You have brought shame onto the Hyuga family with your actions, Hinata. I am not pleased, Heishi continued. As she realized the magnitude of her error, Hinata leaned forward and exclaimed, It's not like that. Tears were starting to well up in her eyes. You stupid girl, Hishi remarked. How could you do this to Naruto? Hinata shuddered in front of him, tears streaming down her cheeks, and Hiashi's eyes grew softer. If it was your teammates you ate dinner with, I would understand. But you and another man, of course people will jump to conclusions, especially seeing you both together all the time. Do not displease me further, Hinata. I am already disappointed in you with your actions. Should you wish to annul the marriage, I can have it arranged, Hishi murmured. Wiping frantically at her tears, Hinata yelled, No, I love Naruto. I didn't think that being friends with Kei would do this. I didn't realize we were so close. I didn't realize that people would think of us like Tot. With a melancholy smile on his lips, Hishi closed his eyes. Your actions suggest far more than friendship, daughter. You are young and innocent, but also naive. Naruto would have thought the worst, seeing you with Kei last night when it was your 3rd anniversary. I suggest you find him, Hinata, apologize and explain your actions. Naruto is a fine man, but I fear you may have a long road ahead of you to earn his forgiveness. Not associating yourself with Kei could possibly also ease the rumors. Tearful, Hinata nodded and walked out of the office. Neji was waiting for her when she opened the door and walked slowly down the hallway. What are you doing, Hinata? Sama, can you not see that Naruto loves you with everything he has? Are you so willing to throw away what you have for some other man? Neji responded with a scowl. He held Hinata tightly as she just crumpled into his chest, her cries echoing through the hallway. How could you be so naive, silly cousin? As he held her, Neji pondered. Hinata entered the office after arguing her way past the Hokage's secretary. Senju Tsunade wasn't feeling well. She only slept for 4 hours after spending several hours comforting the upset Naruto before being summoned to an urgent meeting with Akatsuki's Anbu commanders of movement. The Shukaku was about to be freed, and the case cage had been abducted. Furthermore, Shizune's removal of her sake stash didn't help. She was generally in a foul mood. Even with an emotionally dead Naruto who appeared to be death incarnate, she had sent Team Kakashi out. Though she knew he would do whatever it took to defend his brother Gaara, Tsunade hoped he was alright. Tsunade looked up at Hinata with annoyance as she approached her timidly. Resuming her paperwork, Tsunade grumpily said, If you're looking for him, he's gone. She was trying to control her rage at seeing the Hyuga heiress. Hinata blinked at her, looking shocked. Hinata flinched inwardly as her stutter returned and she asked, where did Naruto go? You caused him a great deal of pain and sorrow, which left him in a distressed state. It sickens me that you're so free to show your love while he's away, Tsunade muttered angrily. Kei and I are not romantically involved. Naruto is my favorite, Hinata cried out. Your behavior says something different. Tsunade roared as she got to her feet, Don't think I don't know what goes on in this village. Hyuga Hinata. You go out with one Yoshida Kei almost every weekday, spending long hours in company alone. Hinata, he sat there for 4 hours. On your 3rd anniversary, I patiently waited for you for 4 hours. Do you know what happens to someone who does that? When they depart and discover you with another man, it kills them on the inside. Hinata fought back tears as Tsunade slumped in her chair, looking suddenly very old and exhausted. Hinata sadly thought, how would he ever forgive me? I've hurt him so badly. Hinata, why would you do that? How come you would betray Naruto in that way? Looking at the ground, Hinata muttered, I didn't mean to. I was lonely, and Kei was a good friend. Please. I need to see him, Hokage. Sama. I must grovel at his feet and apologize to him. Desperately, Hinata said, Please, I need to see him. I need to let him know that I still love him. Tsunade shook her head pitifully. I apologize, Hinata. He has left for Suna. Akatsuki abducted the case cage, and he is now pursuing them. Before going to the academy, Hinata gave a numb nod. The day seemed to go by quickly, as though she had done nothing. Her classes were taught numbly, and she was thinking about a lot of different scenarios, mostly of Naruto rejecting her and leaving, which she couldn't handle. Her feelings were all over the place, but fortunately it was over. The day came to an end, and she started working on the last of the homework before Kei showed up later in the afternoon. Want to grab dinner, Hinata? He inquired. Hinata shook her head and gave him a sad look. A quiet, no, thank you, came from her. Kei, who was rarely rejected by the kunoichi, appeared taken aback. Related to last night, Kei smiled and said, I'm sure it's just a big misunderstanding. Yes, but the answer is still no, I'm sorry, Kei, but I can't associate myself with you anymore. I may have lost the love of my life because of my stupidity, Hinata said. I'm leaving the academy today, so this is my last day. What? Why give up? The kids adore you because you are an excellent teacher, Kei cried out. Is it not true that you love me? Hinata inquired. Red in the cheeks, Kei looked down, unsure of where to look. I apologize, Kei, but I am unable to reciprocate your feelings. I adore another man, to whom I have made a commitment. All that existed between us was friendship. Although I always thought of you as a friend, I enjoyed our conversations. I should have realized it was a bad idea to go out to dinner with you by yourself. Others might view it differently, but I assumed it was just us going out as friends. Kei, I can't let him go. Naruto is everything to me, and I cannot let him go. In addition to being my fiancé, he is the light that illuminates my world, the brave knight who shines in the dark, the person who will pick me up when I fall and support me when I'm feeling low. Hinata looked up at Kei and said, I would rather die than lose him. Kei, you are a good man. You wanted me for yourself, and we're all self-centered. I apologize for leading you on, which was my fault. She walked past him and out the door, saying, Goodbye, Kei. Maybe I'll see you around. Slumping against the door, Kei cast a sorrowful glance at her departure. Shay. I knew I shouldn't have gone after her. Who am I to compete with Uchiha Naruto? We really are selfish individuals, muttered Kei. Kei turned to see Iruka watching Hinata go out the front door after hearing a voice next to him say, It's not wrong to be with the one you want to be with. Both Naruto and Hinata were in the same year group. He was more of a quiet and reserved genius, while she was extremely shy. Together, though, they achieved unimaginable heights and will only get bigger. I am certain that Uchiha Naruto will become Hokage, just as I am certain that Hinata will be the heir apparent to the clan. Hinata has always chased after Naruto, following him with her gaze. She was slow and gentle, like a snail, and Naruto was quick and cunning, like a fox. However, he patiently awaited her so that he could let her into his world, and she seized the opportunity to finally walk hand in hand and by his side. Hinata's greatest strength and greatest weakness is Naruto. Iruka said, I'm sorry, Kei, but any dreams you had of Hinata ending the engagement and falling in love with you would never have come true. Kei muttered, I'm a bad person, aren't I? No, you are merely a human. Iruka retorted, but I also don't approve of you trying to steal girlfriends and fiancés. Iruka gazed at Kei with rage, and Kei's eyes grew wide. And I'm going to teach you a lesson for trying that, so you'll never think again of trying to steal someone away from another, Iruka said in a hushed voice. Mommy, Kei whimpered. Later, as the room was overflowing with papers, Kei sobbed while marking stacks of tests from all of the academy's teachers. As he walked out the door, Iruka grinned broadly and said, I'll see you later, Kei. Iruka gazed up at the sky and grinned. Fresh air, ah, was his response. Hinata waited patiently, day after day near the gate. She was resolved to meet Naruto when he came back. The gate guard roster which changed always saw her there. Quietly reading, thinking, simply staring out at the horizon or occupying her time. 2 weeks went by, and Hinata was still vigilant in her watch. She came early every morning, and left late at night. And then finally they came. Team Guy and Team Kakashi emerged from the horizon. Amusingly, Guy was carrying an exhausted Kakashi. As they were let in, Hinata stood there patiently, waiting. They all looked tired and worn out, but it was Naruto's hollow eyes that haunted her the most. They were so empty. Naruto turned to look at her and she looked at him, stepping forward. Naruto sighed, running a hand through his hair and moved towards her, only for Sakura moving intercept Hinata first. Guy motioned for the rest of them to move along, as it wasn't their business. Neji lingered hesitantly, but Tenten pulled him away. Hinata turned to face Sakura. Slap. Sakura had slapped Hinata, causing her face to turn sideways. Hinata blinked to herself, realizing that she deserved it. How dare you? She hissed, lifting her hand once more. Hinata turned her head back and glanced at Sakura, but she made no move to defend herself. Sakura started to swing, but a powerful hand grabbed her wrist as she pulled back. A weary voice uttered, Sakura-chan. Enough. Please? Sakura turned to Naruto, who grabbed her arm, nodded, and brushed past Hinata, who was trying desperately to control her emotions as she looked at Naruto. May we speak? Hinata inquired, unable to read Naruto's face.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.